Welcome back, guys. It's been a while, but we have finally made it. We have made it to the series finale of the original run of Twin Peaks. We've done it.
It's hard to believe. These two episodes I think will always in my memory feel like one event because I watched them in the original broadcast as a 2-hour movie, even though they did, the credits did roll. I remember this. The credits did roll after the first episode, and they had the title sequence and everything play for the second. Like they played them as two episodes back to back. They didn't
Okay.
re-edit it into a movie or anything, but it was but yeah, I always think of these two together, even though watching them again, they're very different, and both good for different reasons, right? Like um obviously the last episode is its own thing, but episode 28, Miss Twin Peaks, is a classic of its own, so I'm excited to talk about it.
And we'll get into it, but I gotta say, the finale of episode 28, even though it is now 30 plus years old, is one of the most exciting television, like final few minutes of a television show I've ever seen. It is cinematic on the level of like how that action packed scene is with all the lights and the smoke and everything backstage on with Miss Twin Peaks.
Hmm.
It's really exhilarating. Even though, even already know what's going on. Like watching it again, I'm like, this is just really well done.
Yeah, it's hard to like. It's probably unfair a bit to Tim Hunter and Miss Twin Peaks to lump them together all the time, but at the same time, like I said, I think it's a really strong episode on its own. I think it is just riveting to watch, and just even if it had been like, imagine it had been either because nobody experienced it without having to wait, right? Like either you watched it later when you could watch them at your own pace however you wanted, right, like we do in the modern era, and you could go right to the next episode, or even in the original broadcast you went like, there was a commercial break and then there was more of the show right away, so you never had to wait. But imagine if it had been where that had been like a week between, it would have been so exciting to wait for that next episode.
So I think I've already asked you guys this, but because these two were aired so far after the rest of the episodes, did they basically already know the show was canceled? Had they announced it yet? Or was it like, yeah, the show's canceling. We're just airing the last two episodes?
My
The
understanding
writing,
is that ABC had released its fall schedule and Twin Peaks was not on it, so it hadn't been
yeah,
announced as being officially canceled. So I think there was probably some crazy people like myself who maybe hoped that it would come back mid-season or something.
and I believe there was another like letter writing campaign,
Yeah,
but it just kind of fell on deaf ears at this point. So yeah, I mean the writing was kind of on the wall, which is a shame because like when you get to the end of these two episodes, really are like, this is exactly why the show needed to be on the air. Like
yeah.
they really like completely like defend the existence of the show, for crying out loud. And I do wonder if they would have split it up, if one would have been one weekend and then the next week, would it have jumped the ratings up even more for the final episode? Because people would have been like in suspense, waiting to know. Would it have
Maybe.
possibly boosted it up a little bit over the 10.4 that it was? I do wonder if that would have worked. But as it stands, it was a really nice 2-hour finale. Like I'm glad
Yes.
I didn't have to wait that week. But it's definitely like, I do wonder, like, would the excitement of knowing that the final hour of Twin Peaks is coming, we've got all these things that have just happened, people are really getting like kind of reinvested here at the end of the run. Would it have been, and I'm not saying it would have saved the show, but it would have been interesting to see what it would have done in the ratings if that episode had a week to kind of simmer and then see what happened when it came out. But as it stands, a final 2 hours that was a really, I mean, it's a great send off, but it's also one of the most frustrating cliffhangers in the history of television, if not the most for me. Um,
I
it's
gotta think if you're alive in 91 and you're watching this, you've got to be frustrated if you already know or have a feeling the show's not coming back and how it ends.
Well, and that's, I think, where some of where a lot of the fan base really turned on Fire Walk with Me back in '92 was they were hoping that it was going to be that sequel to tell them what had happened, and it's absolutely not. It's a prequel that tells them, like, this is what set up the entire show. So a lot of the fan base was extremely frustrated with Lynch for doing Fire Walk with Me as a prequel and not wrapping up that storyline that they so desperately wanted wrapped up. And of course, it's interesting how, Laura Palmer has the line, "I'll see you in 25 years." And 25 years later, they finally got, I'll say resolution, but boy, I'm going to put it in quotation fingers, man. I'm going
Yeah.
The history of Twin Peaks is so filled with happy accidents and so many things that just make it like, and that "I'll see you in 25 years" is just one of those amazing happy accidents that just makes everything feel so perfect. So yeah, I love that that's in there. And now when you watch it and you see that line, it just resonates differently than
it really does, man. Like it gives you that. It's funny how it gives you a sense of hope now.
Yes.
Like that line is like, that's right. You will see her again in 25 years. Yes, you will. It's so exciting. It's so going to happen. It's really, it's amazing. Again, the happy accidents that are all over the spread of Twin Peaks. Yeah. A series that almost like succeeds because of happy accidents.
Yes.
That is one of the best of the bunch. And it's amazing how much resonance that line had. As a matter of fact, when the first commercial for Twin Peaks on Showtime came up for the return, if memory serves, that was the beginning of the commercial, was Laura Palmer saying, "I'll see you again in 25 years." And we were all like, holy shit.
Yeah.
It was like prophetic, man. Like that, this was all planned to begin with. It was all part of the long con, baby. That's what it was. Yeah,
that's right. Right.
But all along, not the case. But man, it's really interesting how it plays out. But
well, and these episodes.
The Miss Twin Peaks episode is a fantastic episode of television. Like it's as I've talked about ad nauseum on this podcast, Wyndham Earl is just one of my favorite things about season 2. And Wyndham Earl gets a massive, awesome moment in this episode. In the style of Bugs Bunny, he gets a massively awesome moment in this episode.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
these playing as the log lady.
These episodes resonate differently too than they did in the original watch because of Fire Walk with Me and The Return. Like at this point, Laura Palmer, we still hadn't seen Laura have her time to shine and really have her story be told, right? We've gotten glimpses of it, but it's never really been about her. And Fire Walk with Me, changes all of that. So even just after Fire Walk with Me, these episodes resonate differently, and so much of what's in here,
especially the finale. Like, I mean, and the finale, I think, if you were to pick like greatest, TV series finales of all time, this one for me has to be in the discussion because it is not counting the Return, because it's sort of its own thing. I mean, you can call it season 3, but it's really kind of not. It's The Return, and we'll just leave it at that. But as far as the initial 2-season run of Twin Peaks goes, when you're talking, finales of a show, this one's one of the very best. I mean, A, you had David Lynch behind the camera. That makes a world of difference for this episode. But B, just what it does and how it accomplishes what it does and how it ends up creating one of the most terrifying, like, final 15 minutes of anything you've ever seen. Like, it's a stunning episode. It really is. And when we've talked numerous times on the show about how the look of this show, the cinematic look of this show, is what really made it stand out from all of its peers in 1990 and 91. And the finale is an episode that you definitely hold up to show that. Once we get into the Black Lodge, that it's like nightmare fuel, and it's also one of the most amazingly beautiful things I've ever seen on television. Like, it's amazing how it rides that fine line, but goodness gracious, it does. So,
and as David Lynch is anything as David Lynch too.
Yeah,
Like all that stuff going on visually in the Black Lodge. But you guys keep mentioning about, because Fire Walk with Me comes out a year later. Was Lynch already developing that movie, or was that about to be developed because of the show not continuing?
I'm not certain that he had, like, I know that he wrote it with, I mean, he was in love with the Laura Palmer character. It's one of the things he always talked about is that he was always regretful that the series never really gave Cheryl Lee the chance to do something with the part, and it never gave her more identity, I think, than he wanted her to have.
Hmm.
So the film allows him to do that. He was very much in love with that character, and he very much wanted to see something with her. I don't know when the actual script was written. Like, I think every copy that I've seen shows 1991, so it would have been as the year that this was all finishing up. So I think he had a plan to perhaps just kind of expand Twin Peaks. I don't know that he knew that the series was going to come to an end, but he definitely was already having plans to sort of expand the mythos and expand the world. And we'll have a whole big discussion on Fire Walk with Me and the Missing Pieces, because man, that's just a whole other discussion. But I do believe, at least in his mind, I think he was just looking at expanding the world. I don't know that he was necessarily thinking, well, the show's probably over, so I'm going to go ahead and make a movie. I think in his mind, he was just wanting to expand more of the pockets of that universe that didn't get talked about yet. And the biggest part of that is Cheryl Lee's, role as Laura Palmer. I feel like that was just something he was just really wanting to do. He's talked numerous times how much he loves Laura Palmer. And I mean, if you even look at the special features on the Twin Peaks Blu-ray set, there's a whole thing of him sitting down to have a discussion with the Palmers. Like, he has Ray Wise, Grace Zabiskie, and Cheryl Lee all playing their roles, and it's David Lynch, the director and writer, sitting and talking with them. He loves Laura Palmer, and he's in love with his creation, and he just really wanted to expand that. So I don't know if it was necessarily I know the series is going to get canceled, so I'm just going to make this. I just think he just wanted to expand more of that world, which is what the film genuinely does. I mean, it really, it's amazing. Sure. It's amazing how irrelevant the film felt for many people in 92 and how absolutely relevant the film is from 2017 on, because of everything in the return damn near hinging on the existence of Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. Like, it's amazing how important he makes that film in the long grand scheme of things. But like I said, I'm not truly sure what his mindset was, but I do know that he loved that character, and I know that he wanted to do more with her. And I genuinely think that's the main impetus behind it, because Mark Frost was not nearly as involved with the scripting at all. I
don't think he was involved with the film in any way.
I think he had maybe some ideas he kind of looked at, but he had no scripting at all on it. He was not involved in that screenplay at all. I want to say, did Barry Gifford work with him on that?
I think it was Robert Engels.
It was Robert Engels. No, it was Robert Engels. It was Robert Engels. Barry Gifford worked with him on Wild at Heart and then Lost Highway. But yeah, I just think it was just for him. He just really wanted to expand that universe, man, and that was a neat way to do it. I mean,
well, and so many of the seeds that bore fruit in Fire Walk with Me and The Return are in Beyond Life and Death, right? Like, so much of it's a jumping off point. It's the end. It's a closing of a lot of things, but it's also the the opening of a bunch of others, and which is what a season or series finale should be. So it's very. But I think I don't want to miss out talking about Miss Twin Peaks, so we should start
let's
there.
just go and start there.
Let's do it. I was just curious, because it's like about a 14-month time span from the release of this to the release of the movie. So that's a really fast turnaround.
It is very quick. Yeah.
Well, the big thing, of course, this episode starts with Major Briggs getting loose, getting free from the shackles of Wyndham Earl, because of Leo, of all people. Like, that's like, wow, okay, I see you, Leo. You're kind of, I mean, stopwatches right twice a day, so we'll give you.
Well, I don't know if he's, because it's probably a combination of him being in a coma and then being exposed to Wyndham Earl, where he's like, I'm a PEOS, but this guy's effing evil.
Yeah, this guy's way worse than I ever thought about being. Yeah.
Well, they do try to make it seem like he's worried about Shelley. I'm not 100%
Mm-hmm.
sure I buy
Yeah.
it because, you know, he treated Shelley like such shit, and he really used her as an appendage, like a, you know, as an unpaid staff person. Really is like,
Sure.
you know, but who knows? Maybe there was a little part of
I
him that
think
worried
maybe
about her.
in his weird, fucked up way, he
Yeah.
did care about her. Like,
Yeah.
I think at one point he cared about her and probably even loved her, like early in the courting of Shelley. Of course, we now know that goes incredibly south, but because when he looks at the images of Miss Twin Peaks and he sees Shelley, like that does register with him. Like you can see, and it doesn't. To Eric DeRay's credit, that doesn't feel fake.
No.
That feels like
No.
oh man, like that's a real connection for him. And like I said, in his own fucked up way, I do think he cares about her. And that is where he's at least able to try to do one decent thing, you know, when it's all said and done, to try to help her. And if that's what it takes, it's what it takes. But the key thing is Major Briggs is free and back in play. He's back on the board.
Right. Yep.
And we've needed that because Briggs is just a fountain of info when it comes to all things White and Black Lodge, and we need him back in the game. And thank God we get him back. I love though, like, because we all hate Leo. We all hate him.
Yeah, we do.
The way that Wyndham Earl leaves him with the trap of tarantulas, which cannot be native to Snoqualmie, Washington. No. So, like, the fact that he has created, he must have mail ordered tarantulas to have them there. Like,
this is pre-Amazon.
The extreme odds, like the depths that he goes to torture Leo. I mean, you got to give him props for that, man. That's commitment.
That's Bond level commitment.
Yeah, it's Bond villain level commitment, man. If only he had a laser. It's the only thing missing, right?
But the whole rigmarole that he has, like, it's Wile E. Coyote.
It is. Yeah,
like,
no.
Yes.
Acme. It's straight up Acme. I mean, it's like his mouth and string and like it's insane.
Like even his voice kind of is like when in the cartoons where Wile E. Coyote talks.
Yes.
Right. Super genius.
Yes, right.
No, it's great. I mean, Wyndham Earl, again, one of my favorite things about the existence of the second season is Wyndham Earl, and this just continues to prove the batshit crazy but still ridiculous mastermind that he is.
Right.
I love that he revels in his darkness. Like, he just revels in it.
Well, it's about fear, right? Like,
exactly.
Like
that's what it's all about.
That's about generating fear.
That's how you get in. And God, he is creating fear throughout the entire town, and that's just stunning work on his part.
Yeah,
it's so
like, we talk about Annie and the fear that's required, but I think that it's more than that. I think that it is about that he's just trying to stir up generalized fear and anxiety to help. Yeah.
It can't just be around one person. It's got to be a widespread angle, and that's he
wants to create chaos and panic. And we all love a villain that has an arc where we kind of see why they've become a villain. But we also like to watch villains who just have fun being evil and being the villain.
Yeah. He's Heath Ledger's Joker before Heath Ledger was a Joker, right? Like he's an agent of chaos, and he's great. He's wonderful. Oh, this is also where like we always talked about Twin Peaks' wonderful soap opera background, and this is where we get more about Donna and is he or isn't he when it comes to is he or isn't he her father?
Who needs Invitation to Love?
Exactly. We've got Invitation to Love now. This is the real life Invitation to Love. The other one's the Invitation to Love from Wish, the one you have at home. This is the real.
Which, when we get to the next episode, I totally forgot about that scene and another scene with a character.
Right.
From
it's
this
easy
episode,
to not think about all the other stuff that's going on in episode 29, right? But this is, I mean, this is an interesting, sort of arc that's playing out for Donna. You do wonder if it had, like, I mean, in some ways it ties into Ben's arc and his journey.
His redemption, yeah.
Yeah, but it's
Mhm.
something too about what, and how badly he's fumbling trying to handle this situation. But there is something too where you sort of wonder, like, well, they need something for Donna to do. Her sort of purpose is kind of no longer, on the show.
James
There's
is
no real
gone,
purpose
yeah.
for her.
So,
Yep.
right.
Yeah. So they're giving her something to do. It helps with Ben's story. It helps show some, of his development, and also just, has that great soapy quality to it that is just so deliciously soap opera.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it also allows it shows us that Ben's redemption arc is not clean, man. It can't be,
right,
because he's made such a mess of so many things. His redemption has to be a messy one at that.
Mhm.
And this definitely goes to show that it's not going to be squeaky clean. He's not just going to have a perfect 180 and everything is zippity doo dah, zippity a fantastic. It's not going to be the case. Like that dude has a fleet of skeletons in his closet, and he's got so many of those things that are starting to pop back up, including this one here. I've always felt that. I mean, to me, it just feels like he is her father. I've always, just to me, that's how that's always played to me.
Yeah, they never actually confirm it. I mean,
they never
very well.
it.
Maybe he had an affair with Eileen, but didn't impregnate her, right? Like, we don't know.
That's possible.
Yeah,
but
it could be that she and Doc Hayward were, together before they were married. Like, there's all, like, it's not it.
Mhm.
But the thing that I find, and I wish there had been more exploration of this, because I mean, and again, I know I'm trying to stay focused on Miss Twin Peaks, but there is this bit where, in the next episode where she, grabs Doc Hayward and says, "You're my daddy," and they're really, like, I would have loved to explore, like, what does it really mean, right? Like,
Mhm.
the parentage, what does that really mean? I mean, we've always looked at the Haywards as the positive example of family in this town, right? Like
the anti-Palmers, basically.
The anti-Palmers and the anti-Horns, and
yes, in the anti-Horns, yes,
like all of these father-daughter relationships, and we've always seen Donna and her dad have this, like, wonderful, respectful relationship.
Yeah.
He helps her sneak out that night, or not really sneak out, but you know what I mean? Like, he goes to pick her up, and, like, there's, they always treat each other respectfully, and there's this great relationship there. And I think it would have been fun for the show to explore, their relationship if it turned out that they weren't biologically related.
Had there been a third season, that's probably would have been a big part of it right there. That would have been a great, beeline, plot line to go expand upon more. Had there been a third season, I think that really would have been the direction they were going to go with that. Like, that's going to get explored far more.
Or her relationship with Audrey, I think this could have really been interesting.
Because if Ben is her dad, then Audrey is her sister. And boy, that changes a lot of things, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So there's a lot they could have played with there on the soap opera level that had there been a season 3, boy, they had plenty of stuff to go with. There was they still had a dearth of things to play around with had there been a season 3, like in 1991-92. Like, that totally could have worked.
For sure. There's two things that you guys are hitting on with that whole story arc, with Ben's redemption arc and the whole Donna, who's the father,
who's your dad
story arc. Yeah. But I think her line there resonates, like, I don't care if you're actually my father or not. You're the man who raised me.
Yes.
You're the man I love and trust. You're my daddy no matter what.
Which connects to another storyline that's happening in this episode, how Lucy decides it doesn't matter who the biological father of her child is going to be. She's going to choose the father of her child. And I think that is... I think those things tie together. I don't think it's coincidental.
And man, is what's-his-face so relieved that he is not responsible to have to take care of that child.
You know what? Everybody's happy with that result, right? Like, there's not a loser in that scenario.
But
everyone's happy with that.
What I think's interesting about the whole Ben story arc, and this is 30 years before people are talking about cancel culture, even though that's been around long before that word was thrown around. But, like, if a truly toxic person actually wants to fully redeem themselves and grow as a better person, it's not going to be pretty, especially when it's that much damage of decades you've done to people.
That's right.
Not just on a physical, but a psychological abusive
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. There's a
Yeah.
lot there because you also look at the impact of Donna's mother, of her having to deal with this, this skeleton in her closet, one that she thought was properly put away and wasn't ever going to resurface. But Donna finds the paperwork, and of course, that's where everything starts. So it shows how even with Ben finding redemption, he's damaged so many people that there's no way on earth it can be a clean thing. And it just goes to show the depths of the damage that man has done in the town, that even the Haywards, the most, forthright, wonderful family, even they can't escape the clutches of Ben Horn in some way, shape, or form. It really goes to show just like really how shitty that man is, and how much damage he's truly done, that even those wonderful people, the most innocent and wholesome people of the entire town, practically, even they've been contaminated by this man.
Well, and I like how, and because I know this wasn't in the script for, again, jumping to the next episode, but I like how Lynch brings back in Mrs. Horn and how she has this great line, like, why don't you leave these people alone, right? Like, she highlights that, right? And she probably knows whatever
she has to know all the things Ben does, especially with that line delivery.
Yes. Yeah, she does.
Exactly.
But I think another thing, and not just escaping the clutches of Ben Horn, but maybe no matter how good of a person you are, if you live in Twin Peaks, at some point in your life, the darkness that seeds around this town is going to come to you or affect you in some way.
No one can escape it. If you think about it, it's kind of like Derry, Maine in Stephen King's It's, the evil that's within Derry, like it contaminates everything. And it's no different in Twin Peaks, because when we look at, again, getting way into down the road, but when you look at the return and you look at the players that are in play for the powers of good and evil, Twin Peaks is an incredibly unstable location in time space. Like, it is a very weird, wild place to be. And there is a lot of darkness in that town. And now, the show starts with the ultimate force of light in the town is already dead. So it's just like, man, there's so much darkness that has to be dealt with. And these two episodes really show, again, the contamination of whether it's, the evil of Bob, as Albert said, the evil that men do, whatever you want to call that. It definitely, there's something in this town, like something in the water, basically, that makes it a very dangerous place to be. Let's be honest. Like, it's a scary place. It's a beautiful place, but it's also a very scary place. And I love the idea of that sort of the darkness, that contamination. Again, Lynch loves that under the surface. That's very much Twin Peaks. It's warm, sunshiny apple pie or cherry pie and coffee, on the surface. But when you go below, there's just so much bad creamed corn.
Well,
right? There's just so much.
I think Lynch, as a baby boomer, of course, he grows up in the 1950s. So, this nostalgia of Americana that was being sold post World War II, right?
Yes.
Like,
And it's
move to
actually an
suburbs.
Americana that never existed. Right? It's not true. The 1950s were not all sunshine and rainbows. They were for certain people, but beyond that, they're no different than things now. There were just the same issues, only they were brushed under the rug a lot more. You didn't have things like social media and 24-hour news cycles to expose all that stuff.
Right.
Nowadays, of course, you can get Twitter can get someone canceled in a matter of minutes. But back then, the powers that be were able to really control things. And if you didn't, if you wanted something to disappear, you could make it disappear. That's just the way it was.
It also with Donna and James and Audrey, I wonder if David Lynch read the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew as a child.
I can't think that that's not some form of influence. And I mean that sincerely. I cannot think that there is not some influence of those books and what he does with those characters being high school students, you can't tell me that there's not some influence there. There's no way on earth that's an accident. That's going to be there.
Let's talk about the pageant itself.
Yes.
Oh.
First of all, I just want to say Lucy gives it a good run. Lucy gives it a good run. When I watched it again, I was like, you know what? She could win. Lucy could win. She's a little firebrand out there. I'm like, you know, good for her. Good for her. No, it's so funny because like it is definitely the Twin Peaks version of the Miss America pageant, which just makes it's so ridiculous, but at the same time so charming and so cute. But it's still very much Twin Peaks.
Yeah,
it's still very like.
Yeah, whether it's Lucy's dance or Lana's dance, or you know, you can tell Donna is just her heart's not in it.
No, and just
the whole time
opening number with the clear plastic ponchos and umbrellas and stuff like
they're wrapped in plastic. Did anyone else see this?
God, they are.
All of the women of Twin Peaks are wrapped in plastic. It's really
that's so messed up when you think about it. It's so messed up. It's so perfectly Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
No, it is such. I mean, it definitely is one of those things where you kind of in your mind's eye kind of build up like what you think the pageant's going to look like because it's such a hot topic in these last few episodes. But even I don't think in your wildest dreams could you really like imagine what it's actually going to look like. And it's
who thought there'd be that much plaid in a beauty contest?
Who knew? Like, honest to God, who?
It's in Washington.
It is the lumberjack fashion show if ever there was one, man. Like Monty Python could have written a numerous number of songs about it. It's so goofy and so charming, and it's played so straight as like a typical like every time you've ever watched a Miss America pageant on television, everything there is there in that. Like it's all there. And it's, oh God, it's wonderful. I'm so glad this episode exists, period. Like it's so good.
And then he thinks, well, of course, the mayor and Lana think they have it in the bag, but apparently Annie's speech is just too moving.
Yeah.
And you know, again, like we always like nowadays it's like that's the big thing, like when you get to the speech part of the Miss America pageant, like you remember the girl who had the whole thing about maps, like everybody remembers Miss South Carolina, that video that went viral with Mario Lopez about 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, whatever. Like that's the kind of stuff like you expect nowadays, like you're just waiting for that to happen. And Annie being such a genuine breath of fresh air and like being so genuine in everything that she's saying. Like Heather Graham really sells that moment. Like she really does. And you totally fall in love with Annie in that moment. If you weren't in love with her already, you absolutely are by that point. You totally get why Dale Cooper and her need to be together. And you totally get why the judges would go against, you know, Lana and give Annie the award. Like you totally get that. It's a great moment. It really is. In a bunch of
though to be honest, like, and this is the lawyer in me, but I mean, 2 of the judges have clear conflicts of interest in this budget.
Yes, they do.
Dick is the only one who literally is like a fair judge. But putting that aside, you know, and this also, the mayor makes a comment that I think supports my theory about Annie being some sort of like lodge creation, because he said at one point, he says, hasn't she only lived in this town for 5 minutes or something like that, right? And it's like, no, she grew up there. Like she is like this long-term resident, but nobody remembers that for some reason, right? So there's this that just reinforced for me my theory that maybe Annie is has some sort of like, you know, mystical connection. But I do
it's a solid theory.
Yeah, and it would make sense why Coop is drawn to her.
Right. Yeah. But I also think that the whole, I think you're right. Like the whole thing is patently absurd, but so wonderful and charming, and just captures so much of the magic and the oddball charm of Twin Peaks and as the series. Like it feels very much Twin Peaksy. right?
Yes.
Which is
Yeah.
Mhm.
and
It delivers on the goods. What you would
Yes.
want out of a pageant in Twin Peaks, you get it.
Yeah,
Like what
yeah.
you think it would be and what you'd want it to be, you absolutely get that. And I love that about it. It's so wholly perfect in what it is.
Yeah. And I think that there's you know, as again, I know it wasn't intended to be part of the final night of broadcasting of Twin Peaks, but it does feel like, because the next episode touches on other aspects of what is very Twin Peaksy, so it's nice to have that cornball sort of and absurd humor kind of aspect so strong here and so well done here. Like Tim Hunter gets the vibe and the charm of that and really brings that out here, and I think that that's you know, I think that that's great. And then there's a turn in the middle of the, not at the middle of the pageant, I guess at the end of the pageant, where it goes from absurd comedy to, you know, horror, really.
Yeah, it does.
And it's so effectively done. It's so smooth, so natural. Feels like one moves right into the other so smoothly, even though it's such a tonal shift.
The minute that Bobby locks eyes with Wyndham Earle's log lady, it's amazing how it all just turns on a dime. Like,
yeah, because he even says a funny line. He's like, "What does he say about are there your whole family's here?"
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Such a great line.
And then it just goes all downhill from right there.
Right before all that happens, is there some guy like trying to like accost the log lady during the whole Miss Twin Peaks?
That yes, there is something, and I can't remember now what it was because it's been a bit since I was doing my rewatch. But there is something, because there is something with the log lady that makes everybody like look at one thing while you're looking over here. And there's the other thing that happens with Wyndham Earle, and now you just said that, and I'm like, man, what am I missing now? But that's it. Yes, there's something there. What I also love too, though, is leading up to this point, you know, Cooper reconnects Major Briggs. And we start finding out about Jupiter and Saturn, and you know the fear and love thing, right? So we start getting more of that mythos with the Black Lodge and the White Lodge, and Cooper finding out that, you know, the mentioning of the Queen is what leads him to get to the pageant. But of course, he gets there just a little too late. Yeah. By the time he gets there, Wyndham Earle's got the upper hand, and he's gone with Annie, and it's just man, it's such a heartbreaking and scary moment when all that goes down.
He had been distracted by Lana's dance.
Yeah,
maybe he'd have gotten to Coop faster.
Maybe. There's something too, though, like the Wyndham Earle log lady thing. Like it's you say it and it sounds like it's a joke and it sounds silly. Oh, it's a guy in drag, blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. There's something so inherently uncanny valley creepy about it, though. And the look on his face, the smile, like it's eerie how much he looks like Margaret, the log lady, and at the same time, like he's Wyndham Earle. There's something about that. Like it's the same thing like we talked about before, when the horse costume comes trotting up to Major Briggs. It's that weird, like I kind of want to laugh at this, and at the same time, it's so utterly bizarre and weird that my brain is like, this isn't really as funny as you think it is. You need to run away. Like it's that fight or flight response starts kind of kicking in. Right. There is something about that. Like the look of Wyndham Earle in that, it's not played for laughs. No. And normally, especially in the 90s, a guy in drag would have been absolutely played for laughs. And it's absolutely not. It is absolutely not played for laughs. It's genuinely chilling. And I love the way that, you know, again, Wyndham Earle and Cooper are in the same building, but Wyndham Earle has the upper hand, and he's just, seconds ahead of him, man. He's just seconds ahead of him. But that's where Earle's been the whole time.
Strobe light, which has, you know, clearly really does have this interesting effect, also harkens back to early in the season with the pilot with the flickering light and how disconcerting that light was in that moment, and that really brought me back to that. Seeing that here, like it really.
Well, and again, that strobe effect, when it's done right, can really enhance the terror and sort of the it throws off your spatial geography, like where everything is and where it should be gets thrown out of whack. Yeah. And that makes it even that much more disorienting, and it makes your brain that much more nervous and really kind of freaked in the moment. It's a really well constructed moment. It really is.
Really helps with the transition in the tone that I was talking about.
It's amazing how terrifying.
Absolutely, it does.
Mm-hmm. that and the smoke and I mean, again, we know, I mean, and the show's been telegraphing for a while that Annie is, going to be in danger. And so, we know that where this is going, and that just adds to the fear. It's not a spoil. It's not like it spoiled it for us. Like it's
No.
more building that fear and anxiety around that, because
Yes.
we know that she's in danger.
This is not going to end well if Cooper doesn't get to her
Mhm.
rescue in time. Yeah,
Right.
it is. It's
Mhm.
really, it definitely, it lights the ignition fuse on the bomb, right? Like now the ignition is going, like it's getting
Yeah.
closer and closer to detonating. That's definitely that building of tension. And again, this episode ends, and man, like what an ending of an episode, because
Mhm.
boy, you're breathlessly anticipating the next episode to start, because you've got to see where this is all going to.
Yep.
This has to end somewhere, and it's not going to be a pretty place where it ends. And
Right.
of course, all roads in this case end up leading to the Black Lodge, and that's where, unfortunately, that's where it's all going to come to a conclusion. And that's just boy. I mean, going into this final episode, there's just a sense of dread. Like it's
yeah. Is it? I mean, it's not the Black Lodge, right? Doesn't David Lynch say that we don't see the Black Lodge in the series? Like,
I guess
it's the waiting room, or
it's the waiting
red
room, whatever you want to
or
call it.
however
Yeah.
you want to. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I was thinking about that too when I was watching this one. Like I had kind of always referred to that place as the Black Lodge for a long time, but in reality, it's like, no. I mean, as as disconcerting as the Red Room and all of that imagery is, the Black Lodge is probably an even more terrifying place.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Like we may have
Probably a lot more like the convenience store.
Yeah.
Like it probably reeks of that vibe.
Right.
And you'll of course get to finally see that in the
Good
return.
point. Yeah.
And God, it's nightmare fuel. Like I feel
and
like
in Fire Walk with Me, there's a glimpse of it there.
You get a glimpse of it there. Yes, you do.
We do get to see, I believe we get to see the White Lodge in the return.
I thoroughly believe that.
Yeah.
I have believed that from the word go.
Yeah.
I have always thought that is what we're seeing when we see that. Unless they have their own waiting room.
Yeah.
I've always thought that's what that was.
Yeah.
But I feel like even with this being like a waiting room to the Black Lodge, it is definitely Black Lodge adjacent.
Yes.
Like it is absolutely connected to it. And it's absolutely not a good place. It's not even what I would call a limbo where you could go either way. It is very much in a bad place. And as bad as that is, if that's not the true Black Lodge, if you're only, again, scratching the surface of that, shit, dude, I don't want to go to the Black Lodge. No. I don't want to see any of that.
No telling what horrors lie there.
I mean, if you think about it, it's on that level, man. This is very Lovecraftian. This is very cosmic.
Absolutely.
And that's the kind of stuff that really gets under your skin when you start thinking about like how minuscule we are in the grand scheme of things of the Black Lodge and the White Lodge. Like that's, you're grateful that the White Lodge exists. Thank God, because if not, Christ, man, like the Black Lodge is nothing but nightmare fuel, period. Full stop. That's it. It's what it is.
The other thing you talk about making it Lovecraftian is just that existential dread that we know is coming. Like as soon as Wyndham Earl knows how to get in there, we know it's just going downhill.
Yeah. And, the previous episode, we saw that quick image in Glastonbury Grove of Bob's hand, coming out from the curtain and stuff. Like it's all like, again, the pageant gives us a nice, wonderful, fun moment. But there is still so much dread hanging over all of these proceedings, man. Like it is definitely there. And you feel like everything is building up to this final confrontation. And God only knows what that's going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And with that,
I think that takes us into episode 29. Yeah.
And that, man, this is an all-star lineup when you've got David Lynch behind the camera, Mark Frost, Harley Payton, Robert Ingalls, all on the script. Like the best writers of the bunch are putting this all together. And, you get what is arguably one of the single best hours that David Lynch has ever directed. You get what is arguably one of the single best episodes of this TV series. You get arguably what is one of the single best episodes of network television. For my money's worth, I mean, This episode, when it ended, was one of the most frustrating things I'd ever seen, because of the knowledge that there most likely was not going to be a season 3. But I was genuinely glued to my seat. It was riveting seeing this the first time, not knowing where the hell this was going, not knowing where it was going to end, having preconceived notions of what you thought might be the case. And boy, it's amazing how much Lynch kind of sets up the tone for what's going to be the return in this episode.
Absolutely. I mean, maybe happy accident, but still, like the stuff that happens to Cooper 25 years later, like
It's all going to have a payoff in the end in its own
it all
way.
plays in the, it all ends up happening, but it's just kind of wild that I don't know what their initial plans were, but it's just kind of weird universal symmetry that it worked out how it worked out.
Do we want to maybe talk about the non-Red Room aspects of the episode first and get those out of the way?
I think that's a good idea. Let's get that stuff out of there.
We got a bank scene to talk about that ends up being one of the funniest damn things David Lynch has ever directed.
Which I had totally forgotten about this scene because everything that happens in the Black Lodge is all I remembered from watching this episode.
Well, it takes us back to the waiter and the milk in the season premiere of episode 2 with the old guy walking back and forth, even though it's not nearly as drawn out as that first one. But
that guy is absolutely hilarious, though.
He's great.
The guy running the bank is like one of my favorite things in this episode because it's so perfectly David Lynch.
Yeah.
David Lynch loves old people. You can just tell David Lynch loves old people. Yeah. And that little guy, his little shuffle to get Audrey the drink of water and the shuffle to bring it back. Like it, I love that Lynch just keeps the camera on the tripod. Just pans it over. Hands it back. No cut, no edit. Just let it play.
And his line delivery, I think it takes him like a full minute to finish a sentence.
Yes. It's I mean, it's breathtakingly funny. It's just like in The Missing Pieces, the guy who goes up to Pete about the 2x4. It's that level of just wonderful insanity, and it's great. If you think about it, the shuffle had to walk so that the guy sweeping the floor in season 3 could run, man.
The banker had to shuffle so that the Bernard brother could
sweep.
Yeah, but I also love Andrew in this scene. I love how he's like all like, "Good for you, in your youth, for being this, a shit disturber, and but now get out of my way."
Yes, I have to.
I got things to do.
I love his whole line delivery throughout that whole thing.
Well, again, you've got Dan O'Herlihy, and he's just such a phenomenal character actor, and he's just great as Andrew. I mean, he is. He's wonderful. But you got Andrew and Pete. That's the other thing. Like, Pete's with him. And so, like, this is one of those things where it's like there's a lot riding on this safety deposit box, right? Like, we've been wanting to see what this is all going to open, what's it going to lead to. We went through the puzzle box and breaking the other puzzle box and getting everything to the final point where we get the safety deposit key, right? So we've been building up for the past couple episodes to this moment. And so we've got the bank. We've got the little old shuffling banker. We've got Audrey chained up inside the bank because she's purposely like saying, "I'm not going to leave." Now we've got Andrew and Pete opening up this safety deposit.
Well, okay. So I want to say, even though we don't see Catherine in these episodes, and too bad too, because we've seen the end of Catherine, unfortunately. But I mean, the reality is that she knows. Okay, this key was given to her by her, rival, who is not someone who like wished her well or like she knows there's got to be something up with this. That's why she sends it. Like, I'm surprised though that she lets Pete go because I do believe that she cares about Pete. Like,
I do too.
I'm holding.
I agree with that.
But she's not there for a reason. She's too smart.
Oh Lord, to be there. Catherine was not going to be there. No. She was not going to dirty her hands with that, just in case it did go tits up. Which it does.
It does.
It absolutely does. It goes tits all over the place. Really, let's be honest. It's pretty crazy. So, like, let's just get to it. They open the safety deposit box, and it's a goddamn bomb. Like, it's just like perfect boom,
Yeah.
we're out. Like it's
Yeah.
it. There is no, and that's again, this ends without us seeing the fate of Audrey,
Yep.
the fate of Pete, the fate of Andrew, the fate of that little banker. We know that there was an
We
explosion.
know his glasses flew out of the building.
But, which is again, that's so perfectly David Lynch.
Yes, yeah.
It's so perfectly Lynch. It's like something out of Wild at Heart, honestly.
Yeah,
It really
with
is.
the money slowly falling. It's great.
Yeah, it's like the shotgun going up the guy's head in Wild at Heart,
Yeah.
where the head bounces off the walls.
Yes.
It's that
Right.
that kind of level of Lynch, which is what he was making at this point, anyway. So that actually tracks.
Yeah.
But yeah, you didn't know what happened, and for most people, the big thing is what the hell happened to Audrey? Did she
Yes.
survive? Did she
Mhm.
not? Nobody knew, and it wasn't until the return that you got any kind of answer about that. So we didn't know, did Pete survive? And of course, we all want Pete to survive,
Yeah.
but when that
if
scene
you
is
trust
over,
the secret history or the last
Yes.
dossier, then it turns out that, which I'm not 100% I do. I think it plays with timeline issues maybe a little bit, but we can get into that when we talk about the return.
yes,
Mhm.
But Pete doesn't survive, and neither Andrew doesn't, which nobody really cares about. But
nobody, and we knew Andrew was right there in front of it. So I mean,
Yes,
he's going to take the brunt.
yeah,
But it's like Audrey, of course, was the big question: is she dead? Is she not? So when this episode ends, again, keep in mind, we all kind of pretty much knew at this point there was going to be no season 3. And it's like, what the absolute shit, man? Like, what happened to our girl? Like, is she with us or is she not?
Right.
And that was one of those frustrating things where it's like it ends and you're like, fuck, man. Like, I don't get any resolution with that. And that is like, it's a pain that we all felt until the return. And of course, I'll be honest, I wish she would have had more in the return. I'm not going to lie. The return for me did not do her any favors. I don't understand what all really happened between her and Lynch. I know that has a lot to do with that, but as it stands, Audrey, who's always been, I think all three of us have agreed, she's been one of our favorite characters. It's a sad, like, non-answer to what happens to her. We're again looking at this in the context of 1991, where we knew there was not going to be anything else, right? Looking at it in that context, that's a big question mark. That was, again, part of the frustration of the fan base when this episode ends.
Right, because there is no Audrey in Fire Walk with Me.
No.
Not that it would have been prequel anyways, but she's
not even in it. Like, she's not even there. Right.
No. So you're right. This is the last we see of Audrey. We think we're going to see of Audrey for a really long time. Yeah. And they teased us in the return. It was forever before we saw Audrey. So they were definitely pent up and built up. But yeah, no, this scene, a great, very Twin Peaks scene, very Lynchian scene.
Yes.
Very, like I said, a little more abbreviated than maybe what, we're used to from Lynch, but still, I was actually surprised when I was rewatching it this time at how short of a scene it really is.
It is. It's a really quick scene. Like, it's kind of like, oh my God, boom. Like, it's just kind of done. Yeah.
But yet it does still create that sort of tension with the old man shuffling that you felt from that first from the season premiere. There's really effective scene, and you're right, one of those things that just leaves you wondering, like left you wondering forever about not forever, but for a long time,
for 25 years
really happened. Exactly, that's right. The other scene that I always really love seeing when it happens, as much as I find like, and I think this scene could have been played more for laughs, but it's actually, I think the way Lynch films it is really quite tragic, is the scene with where was I going with this?
Doc Hayward?
Scene with Nadine waiting.
Oh, Nadine, yes. Nadine.
Oh, yeah.
Back into her old personality, remembering who she is. And I meant old as in before, not as older, but I guess that applies too. I still laugh that these people are supposed to be in their 30s, late 30s, or early 40s. Like, come on.
But, I guess they'd be about their mid 40s, right?
Maybe. They still look way.
Because I know Peggy Lipton was born around 46, 47, and I think Everett McGill's around the same age.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they would be in their late 40s. But when they say she's 35, I think I'm like, no.
Anyways, but the but that scene, like I said, I feel like it could have been, and I think I've even heard that maybe in the original script it was written more comedic, and I'm really glad that he took the tone that he did with it, because I find this scene so sad and tragic.
It is,
you know, for everyone. Like
because
Mike feels sad that he's like, even though I think
yeah,
maybe he recognizes, you know what, this
but
probably was
but
more than it
really
should have been,
the
but
sadness that you feel is for Ed and Norma.
yes,
Period.
yeah,
Because
Yes.
they were ready to like finally just go be
yes,
living their best lives, and then
yes,
Nadine snaps out of it and remembers everything, and Ed is just trapped.
yeah,
There's really no
Yep.
other way to put it. He's trapped, and it really is heartbreaking. And Lynch
yeah,
knew that. Like I think
yeah,
he knew that that's the best way to play this scene. Is
yeah,
you could play it for laughs, but that's cheap. Like it really is.
yeah,
It's very cheap, and a lesser director would do that. Lynch is too good for that.
yeah,
And it
yeah,
is. It's amazing how that scene has such heartbreak for Mike, for Ed, for Norma, and even in a way for Nadine, because
yeah.
he was
She
living
was
a better
happy.
life.
She was
happy,
loving her
right?
life. Yeah,
Right. She
I
was
Yeah.
know.
And now she's back to worrying about, her silent drapes, like
And 25
it's,
years
Yep.
later, she gets to find the peace and happiness that she's always been looking for. Great. We'll talk about that later.
we'll get there.
But,
We'll get there.
she was so close to it here, and
Right.
it slipped out of her grasp too.
Right. And that's the
Yeah.
sad thing. Like everybody loses in that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, truly everybody loses. And that Lynch plays that scene beautifully. He does.
Yeah.
And again, give that also all credit to the actors as well. They do a wonderful job with the
Yeah,
part.
they do.
Dude, Everett McGill's eyes,
Yeah.
man. Like he sells the shit out of that scene without saying a goddamn word.
Yeah.
Like you can just see it. Like the moment where he's like, I can't leave her like this. I have to go back to her. You can just see it. You can see the cogs, working.
Yeah.
And it's so heartbreaking because Ed and Norma are one of those couples that we just love because we love loving them. They're just such wonderful people.
Well, and there is payoff for this eventually, and we'll get there. But
25 years later, there's some payoff. And it's it may be my single favorite moment of The Return. If I'm honest, that payoff is probably my single favorite moment of the entire 18 hours of The Return. If I'm really, really honest, it's played so beautifully. We'll get to that. But in this moment, though, the heartbreak is so legit. It really is. It's so legitimate. And it's just masterfully directed and enacted. Again, this is so beyond what network television was in 1990 and 91. And if it was on any other network, if it was any other show, that scene gets played for laughs. Oh my God, she thought she was in high school. Now she's back. That's how it would wacky hijinks ensue as Nadine. Remember, she's old. Like it would be so. If it was on Fox, that's what it would have been, right? Like let's be honest.
Yeah,
it would have sucked. But instead, you get possibly one of the most heartbreaking moments in the run, man, of the two seasons that we get. That is one of the most heartbreaking moments because they build up. You have so many moments throughout the season where it finally feels like Ed and Norma are going to get their time, right? She's finally free of that fuck Hank. She's free of him. She's told him off. Ed has got Nadine out there just living her best crazy life, and she's a wrestler, and she's like winning awards, and she's a cheerleader, and she's got Mike, and everybody's happy. And then crashing down in one fucking scene.
Yeah.
And that scene's not even that long of a scene either. It's not a long scene. No. God damn, so much happens in that scene.
And the way Lynch films it with just like, again, the camera in the corner and just watching it all unfold, like so beautifully done.
Let it play out.
So actually that actress that plays Nadine would have been like she would have been about 37 or 38 at the time.
Yeah, she was the youngest of the bunch of them. I knew that. Like I knew that.
But Everett McGill and Peggy Lipton were both in their mid-40s at that point.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know.
But man, Peggy Lipton, just that woman was ageless. Like she was just beautiful.
I know. I mean, she looks gorgeous in The Return. And
oh my God, she's still stunning in The Return. Yeah. Jesus H. Yeah, and to be honest, Nadine is too. Nadine still looks great. God, Wendy Roby, she looks fantastic, man. She really.
I love Nadine in The Return, but again, we keep jumping too far ahead.
We just love these characters so much.
I know. I comment about. I find it weird that with all that's going on for Doc Hayward, that he takes this little detour to bandage up Nadine. Like, it seems weird that it's not Jacoby in that scene and he's in the other scene. Like, I'm not 100% sure I get the logic of some of that, but. whatever it is, I just thought I'd mention that. Like, I mean, yes, Nadine has been injured. Doc Hayward is the doctor. It would make sense. He would be treating her,
Mhm.
but he wasn't the one that's been on this journey with them, like, through this whole thing.
You would
Like,
think, yeah, Jacoby should be there pretty much lockstep,
feels
right?
like
Like
it,
he needs to be there the
yeah.
whole time, right?
Yeah, and it's weird that he shows up in
But
this
he's
other
also the
scene.
worst doctor. Like
Yes.
Jacoby is
Yeah. Also, Dr. Hayward is probably like, I don't know who is supporting this crazy BS.
Exactly.
You know for a fact Doc Hayward's like, are we really doing this? Are
Yeah.
we really doing this? Are we listening to
Yeah.
Surfer over here, Surfer Boy, Mr. Beach Boy? We're listening to him
Yeah.
on this? Like, really? Like, I don't think so, guys. No.
I know.
Let's not indulge this craziness. You sell that crazy someplace else.
Yeah, exactly. I do find that that and also Jacoby in the other scene, and maybe we can jump to that scene. But
Yeah,
why is he there? Why is he with Mrs. Palmer? Like, I don't get it. Like, it just seems strange. Like, I don't know. Whatever, it is what it is.
I mean, I guess he's the town psychiatrist, even though they could use a better one.
Use a psychiatrist.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus, they could use a better one.
But let me ask you this. So who do you think is talking through? Because I don't think there's a definitive answer to this, but who do you think is talking through Mrs. Palmer?
Do some people think it's what is the guy's name? The other guy, the one-armed man, when he's taken over.
Mike.
Do they think it's Mike?
Do they think it's Mike? Do they think it's, some people say it's Wyndham Earl? Some people think it's Matt, Laura. Some people think it's Annie. Like, there's all kinds of possibilities.
Annie is the one that I thought.
Right.
And going through this on the rewatch, though, I love the idea of it being Wyndham Earl. The idea of him like tapping into those powers and doing
I like that too.
And talking to Major Briggs specifically, because he now knows that Major Briggs escaped. He knows where he is. That's a genuinely terrifying take on that scene. But my initially, I always thought it was Annie. Like, and again, kind of like what you said, if Annie is sort of a product of the White Lodge, like, she would have abilities. She would have the ability to tune into someone. And who would be the biggest person to tune into more than Sarah Palmer? I mean, like, she's definitely got.
But with what we know from The Return about Sarah, maybe it is someone more like Wyndham Earl, right? Like, maybe,
That's a valid point. I mean, dude, could it? I mean, now knowing what we know, could it be Judy?
Yeah.
Dude, like. You can take that any number of ways at this point. Now that we have The Return under our belts, you can take that any number of ways. But now that we've been talking about it, my head canon is it's Wyndham Earl. I love the idea.
I think there's good. I think there's good
evidence. I think there's a good thought process to that.
Yeah,
I really,
especially because of their history and because he knows Briggs escaped.
Yeah.
The idea of Wyndham Earl basically telling him, like, I know where you're at and I need you to tell Dale where to find me. Like, this is how this is going to end. Like, that's creepy. Like, that's genuinely unsettling. And I love it. I'm here for it. I love Wyndham Earl. Anything that just establishes him that much stronger.
This was a scene not in the original script. This is something I'm pretty sure that Lynch added when he came in. Wasn't in the original script. So clearly, I think it's got ties to Lynch's whole understanding of this world and the otherworldliness of it.
Yeah, and I think I had read that Lynch was not super crazy about the character of Wyndham Earl, which I find interesting because he's such a cool character that he didn't quite like that character. So I don't know. I mean, my headcanon, again, that's the great thing about Lynch is he'll tell you whatever you think is right. Like, he's never going to give you the answer. He's never going to tell you. So whatever you think is right. I'm going to go with Wyndham Earl. But if it's Lynch just deciding he wanted to do it, I wouldn't be shocked if in his mind it's Laura Palmer.
I like the idea of it being Laura too. I like it being Wyndham Earl too. Like, there's a number of ones I could go for. I think I like thinking about it being Laura. Because I love Laura having agency.
Yes.
And I like that there's something about her sending a message through her mom that is just really nice. But I also like the.
I would honestly think that would be Lynch's mindset if that wasn't in the original script and he just kind of brought that up. As much as he loves Laura Palmer,
Yeah.
I feel like that's probably his answer. Now, again, he's never going to tell you what the answer is. I think that's his interpretation, and that's fine. But for my money's worth, what I want it to be, and I'm not one of those people that's like, I have to have the exact correct answer of Twin Peaks. I know what it is. No, Twin Perfect, you don't. Quit thinking that you do. Your 4-hour video is cute. It's fine. But you don't fucking know everything. Because unless you get into Lynch's brain yourself, which you have not,
I'm not even sure Lynch knows.
David Lynch doesn't make it work.
Yeah, he probably doesn't know.
I don't think he knows. I think he's
would tell
really comfortable with the fuzziness of the margins. Like
he is so into transcendental meditation. Like I guarantee he doesn't know. Like I would put money on the fact that he does not know, and it's open to your own interpretation, as he would tell you it is anyway. So for my money's worth, I love it being Wyndham Earl. But if someone tells me they think it's Laura, I totally get it. And I'm not going to tell them they're wrong, because really, whoever you pick, you're right. You can find a reason for it to be that person. Period.
And it does make thematical sense with what we know of how Lynch feels about the character, what happens with Fire Walk with Me and The Return. That would make sense in that way.
Laura Palmer would make sense in that. In the grand scheme of things, yes. Yes, it would. And I have no problem with that interpretation. Again, I think there's a real poetry to it of her using her mom as a conduit. That's very beautiful. And then, of course, knowing what we know has happened to Sarah, I could see it totally being Wyndham Earl.
Yep.
I could totally see it being I could honestly see it being Bob. Like, shit, dude. Like, you can make arguments for many of the machinations from the Black Lodge. You can make arguments for any of them.
Maybe it's Jeffries. Maybe it's there's.
Oh my God, Jeffries. That would be amazing. And
the dancing man.
Tell him to look like a tea kettle. Tell him to look like a giant tea kettle.
It's Chet Desmond. That's who it is.
Oh my God. Like, you don't understand how much I need to know what happened to Chet Desmond. Like, I really. We'll get to that when we talk about.
We'll get there. God
damn, do I need to know what happened to Special Agent Chester Desmond? And
but this scene has other beautiful moments in it. There is the repeat scene of Helga, whatever her name is, coming in.
Yes,
jump starting the old man. That whole thing happening again.
From the very first episode. Yeah,
I have to say, when I saw that the first time, I just loved that they recreated that scene. I like that it shows Bobby and Shelley in a happy place.
Yes.
Like, you feel like there's positivity
and
there.
Boy,
so many characters are not getting that.
That plants some big seeds for The Return, does it not? I mean, Bobby and Shelley in particular. Bobby in particular.
Yeah.
Like, Bobby has a genuine fucking arc, man. Like, you start seeing the seeds of it in this season.
Yeah.
But man, The Return, like, I'll be honest, my partner, she hated Bobby Briggs until we got to The Return, and then she's like, I fucking love Bobby now.
Yeah, you should. I mean, Bobby's
gonna happen.
Yeah, Bobby's a jerk for a lot of this series. So I think that's a completely fair interpretation. But I like that there's some happiness there. I like that there's this throwback. I like that there's this Twin Peaksian thing of, cycles and repeating things. Like, nobody's acknowledging that they've had this conversation already. It could be that they tease her in the same way all the time, and these are just the moments.
It's a regular joke.
Yeah. Exactly, it's a running joke.
It's like Norm walking into Cheers, and everybody just goes Norm. It's the same thing, man. It's very much. I could see that being a daily routine.
Yeah, but it could just be echoes of things, like ripples happening again. Like, the gum you like is coming back into style. Like, it's just. Like, it just feels very Twin Peaks, and I love that when I first saw it. I love it when it happens. Every time I watch it, I love that.
And one of the other things I loved about this episode that I'd forgotten about, but again, how much do we love the bromance of Harry S. Truman and Agent Cooper?
Right.
And Harry being out there in Glastonbury Grove, just waiting for him. Like, and Andy coming out to keep an eye on
that whole exchange.
Yes.
You need the special? Yeah.
Yes.
You want to get you a thermos of coffee? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
Also, echoes of the warm milk with the waiter. Like, it's just that how it's drawn out.
Yes.
But you see, it tells you so much about Harry, where he's at in this moment.
He's just there. Like, he gets Cooper to where he needs to go, and he's like, buddy, I'll be here when you get back.
Yeah.
So fucking Harry Truman is there. And I
Do
love
you think
much in that moment.
Yeah.
Do you think Coop tells him to wait because Coop's like, this is my battle, or do you think Coop knows, like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to see in there, and I don't want it to damage you, Harry, because I love you?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think Cooper knows going into it, he's unsure what he's going to see, but he sure does not want to expose it to Harry or to Andy.
I think there's a third reason. He wants somebody to have his back when he comes out.
Also,
he wants
that
somebody he trusts to be there when he comes out.
Because what might follow him out? Shit, dude, we don't know.
True.
He might need help with something coming out. Like, we don't know. Yeah. So I like the idea of him being like, look, man. And the thing is, what I love about Harry Truman is, for a fact he would have gone in there with him.
Yeah,
absolutely.
For a fact, Harry Truman would have gone into this crazy ass scary place that he doesn't even begin to understand, but he would have absolutely been there because Dale Cooper's going in there.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I got chills right now thinking about just what a fucking real one Harry Truman is. Like, man, I love him and Cooper together so much. I could watch a spinoff of the two of them deciding they wanted to go camping and fishing, and I would watch the shit out of that show.
I love Andy in that scene though too. I think it shows so much about Andy too, and his just what a good, decent guy he is. He's taking care of
why he deserves to be the dad of Lucy's baby. Period.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. Yep. So I think again, those scenes of them out in the woods waiting are, I think, essential as essential as any other scene in this.
They are.
They maybe don't feel as consequential, but
also it reminds us too, the Bookhouse boys have always been aware that there's stuff going on, man. They know that something's not right in those woods. And I love that they're there with Cooper's back. Like, that is just like, we have loved their dynamic from the first episode. The minute that Cooper and Harry meet, they became like instant best friends. And I love that even up to the very end of this series finale, that Harry is absolutely there with him. There's just something so beautiful about that their friendship is so fucking pure and so true. And it's based on mutual respect. And even when Harry doesn't understand where the hell Cooper's going with something, he just knows to trust his friend. And I love that, man. Like, everybody should have a friend like he is the Samwise Gamgee, right? To Coop's Frodo. He really is, man. Like, he really is. He's a
Does that make Andy the Pippin?
He is absolutely Pippin, dude. Andy's the one that would absolutely be like messing up with that fucking armor in the Mines of Moria. That's straight up. He's straight up. Yeah.
The other
I love that, like, again, just that friendship is so real and it's so true. And I love that Lynch gives us those little moments, because once Coop goes into the lodge, like, I mean, all bets are off into what we're going to see and what it's going to be. But even still, we take time to cut back to Andy and Harry. Like, we have that little moment with them, again, talking about the special, talking about the thermos, but it's there, man. And that, again, these guys would literally walk through the fires of hell for Cooper, and they would have went in with him. But again, he's got to keep them back because he does have to face this on his own. I genuinely believe that. And also too, again, he needs someone watching his back if something comes out with him when he comes out. And he also just needs to not expose them to any further of the crazy shit, because as much as we love Harry and Andy and as great as they are, I don't know what happens to them if they go in the lodge. Andy, of the two of them, as we'll see in the return, would probably handle it the best. I don't know how
Harry put some money on that. Yeah. I don't know. Harry's still he's recovering, but he's still broken.
He's still a little broken. And that place would contaminate him. It would go after
him. Absolutely. It would have it might have broke him.
In the water. Absolutely. They would have gone after him so hard because he was already filled with pain. And what do they feast on? They feast on pain and sorrow. Harry is fucking fueling that right now.
Well, and maybe Cooper had enough knowledge of that to keep him out.
I think there's a little bit of that. I think in the back of his brain, Coop knew, you can't go in with me, buddy. You can't. You just can't. It's not going to be good for either of us.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not.
We've also got the very opening. This reminded me, speaking about Andy, we start with this shot of Andy and Lucy together in this really, like this pose, this like very sort of 50s idyllic sort of, movie pose. And it feeds into these scenes that, with the engine oil, with Margaret, with Pete before he goes to the bank, with this, like, the timing in this episode is a little weird, but that's, again, I don't think really matters, because again, I
No.
think in Twin Peaks time doesn't always necessarily
You
flow
you'll
like
see so
normal.
much of that in The Return that time is
Yeah.
never really quite.
Yeah.
It's as Doctor Who would say, it's timey-wimey, right?
So I'm good with
Absolutely.
that. But there's, Pete there, and he's accusing the log lady, and they've got the engine oil, and they bring in what's her name? Or am I forgetting her name? From the other victim, and she smells
Ronette.
Ronette, thank you.
Ronette.
Yes.
Yes.
And so we've got, and that scene again, one camera up in the corner, just filming the scene play out. Such an interesting, but he does this a lot in this episode. And all of that sort of lead up, like Lynch does. I just don't think any other director would have filmed this movie or this episode this way, in terms of, like, there is some plot development lead up that has to, to get there, to get them into the Red Room, and he just handles it in a way that is so unique and different from how any other, like, director would have, like, just plotted it. Event number one, event number two. We've got Earl and Annie in the truck, and he does that weird thing where he's forcing her to look in the back, and he's talking about the trout, and it's just so disturbing and scary and terrifying.
The other thing that I've always thought was interesting about the forest scenes is how Lynch really shoots them, like, for real. Like, the only light that you have is in the circle of what the spotlight that you're holding, the flashlight produces, and that's it. It is pitch black. Because normally you watch a film and they have, like, that little bit of lighting just so you can see what's going on in the scene, right? But that's fake, right? That's not real. But in this case, he shoots it so real, and he does it super effectively in Fire Walk with Me.
Yeah,
good God!
I mean, it's like the headlight shots in Lost Highway, right? Like, similar sort of approach.
Whatever is directly in it, you see, but beyond that, it's the black, and that's terrifying.
Yeah,
and especially in the woods, and we know that Glastonbury Grove is not a good place to be, and so it's just the sound of the trees, the rustling, the wind, the craziness of Wyndham Earl, the desperation of Annie, like all of that in that weird pitch black light, type shot. It's genuinely creepy.
That's a reference to King Arthur, isn't it? I'm not totally aware of all of this, but the Glastonbury Grove isn't that the supposed burial place of King Arthur or something? And I've never really understood the connection. I don't know. Maybe hopefully I'm not wrong on that.
Don't they make that reference, and then Pete's like, King Arthur's buried in me, or says it,
right? So maybe, I don't know, but could be, I don't know. But anyways, it's I've never really understood if there's something about King Arthur that's supposed to be, I mean,
it does have connections to King Arthur. I'm looking that up right now. It absolutely does have connections to King Arthur. Regardless of the spelling, the reference to Glastonbury, England, and the burial place of King Arthur.
So maybe that's it, right? So Glastonbury, okay.
Glastonbury, in Arthurian legend, it's believed to be the Isle of Avalon. So, there's that.
So again, mythical connections. Who knows if that's. Who knows? But it's those shot that circle of trees, the engine oil in the puddle, like it is a very disconcerting. It feels very what's the word? Uncanny or just not. It feels like something that holds really terrible potential, right?
Yeah, when you look at it, like, there's nothing inviting about it.
Right.
The trees are like dead. The engine oil, of course, is that black, muddy, murky puddle. It definitely gives you a vibe that nothing good happens here.
That's right.
Like, if you were to stumble upon that, even in broad daylight, the back of your brain would be like, "No, buddy, let's not go here.
This looks
back up, turn around, and just keep walking away. Don't even look back." Because you probably don't want to see what's there. There is a genuine sense of danger about that place. And again, I think even a small child just walking through the forest, if they came upon that, they'd be like, you know what? Nope.
Yeah, it feels like bad things happen here. The again, that scene in the truck and him pulling her into the circle, and then her, like, all of that just feels so abusive. It feels so scary. It feels just really uncomfortable. And her sort of disappearing behind the curtain, like the way they shoot. I mean, it's such a simple effect, but it's so beautifully done. The curtain appearing.
The curtain is a very interesting choice.
Yeah.
It feels like a play. You know, the curtain goes up. The red curtain usually is there in front of the stage play. And it almost makes the Glastonbury Glove area look like a stage. Like you're walking through the curtain, you know, you're on stage. And that's so fucking creepy. Like as someone who's done theater his whole life, like when I first saw it, that's the first thing I thought of, is it looks like a stage. It looks like a play. It looks like something you would put together and stage. Almost looks like Waiting for Godot, you know, with the tree. Like that's all it's really on the set. It's so utterly creepy and so, like, it's just so weird. It is. It's so, yeah. Again, that sort of Lovecraftian horror there, that existential dread from a place like that, you know. And there's a thing, like, I'm not sure if it's like in quantum physics or what, but there's just the idea that, like, there are just certain places, like when things happen in a place, it leaves like a residue of energy. And if something incredibly bad happens in a place, there's just an energy there. You can feel it. The closest thing I can like tie that to is here in West Virginia, we have the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. You can do tours of it, but it was a fully functional asylum since the days of the Civil War. Okay. Now, at one point, to kind of describe how bad this place was, at one point they proudly led the nation in the most number of lobotomies performed every year. There are terrible things that happened in this place, and when you take that tour, I'm telling you, man, when you walk into the building, you feel it. There is a fucking difference in reality when you walk into that building. And it's not in my brain. Ask anybody who's ever done it. You feel it. When you're on the grounds, you can feel the energy of bad things that have happened here for fucking centuries, man. Like hundreds of years, shit happened there. And so, like, that's one of those things where it's like, I thoroughly believe Glastonbury Grove would be steeped in that. Like, it would be like, ever notice how there's no animals around there? Like, you've never seen a shot of deer or anything.
Because the animals know.
Because the animals fucking know, dude. They know. They feel it. They sense it. They know. We don't need to be here. Like, we don't need to be here at all. And it is. There's something. It's such a simple set. It's just 12 trees, man, and a fucking puddle of motor oil. And it is one of the most creepy looking things I've ever seen in film or television. It is so genuinely unsettling.
Well, and I know that, I think I read that Lynch didn't want there to be like necessarily a physical entrance, that he wanted this to be more transcendental than that. But at the same time, I think the way that they end up building it and filming it really captures that, even if it is grounded in a bit of a physical connection.
Because when the curtain comes up, you're like, you're almost in your mind, you're like, is that real? Like, are they really seeing
what is going on?
Or is that just a representation that Lynch is doing? Like, but once you get inside, then you realize, everything's fucking curtains. Every fucking curtain is a doorway. So it's a curtain and it's a fucking doorway. And I love that. Like, it's such a, I mean, God, who else would have thought to do that but David Lynch? Like, anybody else would have made it like there'd have been like some crazy looking portal,
or a door,
or just an actual honest to God door. Like I love the very, like, just the oddness of a curtain, a beautiful red curtain at that, just showing up in the middle of the goddamn forest.
I think the other thing with the curtain too, not just going with your theatrical thing, is like, it's like the curtain represents the thread between one reality to the next.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's that gateway. And
and the curtains are serving as gateways within the Red Room. Like,
within
we
the
see
space.
there's, the hallway space and the room space, and how maddeningly infinite that appears to be.
Yes.
Because
there's that one point where it looks like it's just a never-ending tunnel of hallways.
It's nightmarish.
It is.
Sure.
It is. And you've got that pattern floor going across the entire thing. So there's no way where like you walk into a space like, wait a minute, the floor is different here. I know where I'm. No, it's just one uniform thing.
Maybe the statue is different, the decor, maybe the furniture is very different. Maybe there's no furniture, but it's so repetitive. And so, it really did, like, it's unsettling for sure once you're in there. And I guess we're in there. Let's talk about this. Right?
Now we're in. So
what happens when they're in there? What do you, I rewatched a couple because we kept delaying. I would rewatch it again a few times, which, like I said, I'm happy to do because it's such a great episode to watch. But I was trying to, and I think I like the fact that it doesn't clearly and give you only one possible what's going on explanation. But I love trying to decipher what's happening in each of those moments and each of those scenes. And I don't know why. I'd love to get your thoughts on what you think we're witnessing when Cooper is in there.
I think for me, it's almost like, again, assuming that this is not the Black Lodge and assuming that the Red Room is sort of this sort of, let's just say
assume that too.
More evil limbo waiting room area than the other. The question has always been, do you trust the man from another world? He's helpful to Cooper in the beginning, but other times we see him, there's sort of a dark side to him. And so then you have the scene where he sits down with Cooper and he does the whole thing with his hands and that coffee freezes. And it's like sludge. And then it's just pouring out of the cup. And you're almost like, it's almost like he's preparing him. Like the one thing that always stuck with me is what Hawk says. And he's like, if you go in there, you will face your shadow self. If you don't have the truest of intentions, your shadow self will win. That's exactly what happens in this, as far as I know. That is exactly what happens here. Like in the sense that the doppelgangers, which will eventually become tulpas down the road in the return, if this is sort of like a place where everybody's shadow self kind of exists, and that's a really creepy thought, that if every single person on the planet has a doppelganger, has an evil version of themselves in this space that you could come upon, like that's fucking terrifying. Like there's literally billions of doppelgangers possibly in that space that we haven't even seen, because again, you have to go in there yourself to face your own self. You wouldn't see it if you weren't there. But again, there's something, again, that's that cosmic horror to me. Like it's so crazy. Now we also see the waiter and the fireman technically. So again, that could continue to really push the fact this isn't the Black Lodge. This is sort of a waiting room, a limbo, if you will. He can be there. And I think it's almost just kind of like he and the man from another world sitting together, the hallelujah and the like it almost feels like this space for those entities is kind of like the neutral ground, like Switzerland, basically. Like it doesn't pick a side, like it's just kind of there.
Well, I'm wondering if it's grades, like, we talked about these infinite rooms. Like, I'm wondering if some rooms are closer one way and others are closer another way.
And I think that's an interesting way to deal with that, which is why it would allow him to be there. But unfortunately, when Cooper leaves that room, the direction he goes is going the wrong direction because he keeps going deeper and deeper into it.
Well, and he's even told he's going the wrong way at one point.
Yeah, he does. And it's the man from another world, not his doppelganger, but the man from another world who's like wrong way. And he's like, oh, okay. Like I need to go. I almost feel like it's sort of like the initial test. Where's Cooper's spirit at? Where is his mind at in this moment? We know that Cooper is fixed on getting Annie. We know that he wants to get Annie and get her out of there. We know that that's what his mission is. But this is the first time in the entire run of the show, practically, that we could possibly doubt Dale Cooper. And that's a big fucking deal. He has been right on everything in some way, shape, or form all the way up to this point. But now, this place, he doesn't have control. he doesn't have, you know, the ace up his hole. He doesn't have the ability to charm his way out of this situation. Basically, like, it's going to start getting real bad real quick. Laura Palmer, of course, is there, and that's where we get the 25 years line, the brilliant setup of the 25 years. And it's almost like she's telling him, like, I'll see you in 25 years. And the reason I can tell you that is because you're not going to get out of here.
Right.
You don't realize it yet, but you're not going to get out of here.
Right.
And then we get into doppelgangers. And the most interesting thing for me at that point is the doppelganger of Leland, who tells him, I did not kill my daughter. And you know what's funny? He didn't.
Right.
That doppelganger speaks a truth.
Right.
And that's really weird because he's not wrong. He didn't kill Laura Palmer. Leland did.
Right.
Not his doppelganger. But we see the doppelganger and we're starting to think, like, no, wait a minute. Could that have been what they were dealing with out there? I don't know. Like, I don't think it was, but you could make the argument it could be, because the doppelganger exists. And a doppelganger is not going to tell you the truth.
Right.
Then we come across the doppelganger of the man from another world, and that is unsettling as shit, because you hear him before you see him, because the camera, he's low. Like, Cooper doesn't see anything, and then he looks down, and there he is. And he's doing that crazy weird shuffle. His eyes are that creepy milky white, and it's just, oh god, it's so fucking creepy. And then he's still moving forward deeper and deeper into the lodge, or into the waiting room, I should say, getting closer to the lodge. Let's put it that way. And
I think that's probably how I would.
I think it's probably the most accurate thing we can do.
Yeah.
We find Annie, and then the biggest thing is we find Wyndham Earl. And this is, to me, I really love the way that Wyndham Earl is taken out of this. I've always found really interesting, because it tells us that even the most evil inhabitants in this universe have a fucking set of codes. They have a fucking set of rules you have to follow. And that's very interesting, because you would think that this place would be nothing but chaos. But god damn it, no. There are certain rules you have to follow. You have to pay to play. And I love the fact that Wyndham Earl thinks he can take Cooper out, can take his soul, and then finds out from the head honcho himself, from old Bob, that no, sir, you cannot do that.
Right.
That is, it's an interesting thing. The idea of having a set of the idea of these people, of all things, of these entities, having any kind of, like, God, for lack of a better word, a morality clause, like, that's so fucking bizarre.
If we're getting into, like, Lovecraftian eldritch horror, even like the most ancient or old evil, whether it's like a celestial or godlike being, even if their purpose is to cause destruction, they have a code. They have, like, these are the rules you play by, and if you don't play by the rules, we annihilate you.
And so for me, I've always thought that Cooper's encounter in this area, that it is literally, as Hawk said, it's him facing his shadow self, and ultimately that is what he has to face.
Well, I do think that's supported by the Log Lady intro, if I can read that.
Yes, please.
Which I find really interesting, because the Log Lady intro ends, I'd forgotten that it ends in this weird way compared to every other Log Lady intro, right? But she says, and now an ending where there was once one, difficult to say, there are now two, or were there always two? What is a reflection? A chance to see two? When there are chances for reflections, there can always be two or more. Only when we are everywhere will there be just one. I'll get into, like, I think she's telling us, and of course Lynch is then telling us, after he sort of thinks there isn't going to be any more revisiting of this, that this is about Cooper, that he's failing to integrate all of who he is in this, in this encounter and in this period of time, right? He's failing to acknowledge all of himself. And I think that there's something really interesting there. And again, the Log Lady intro ends with, instead of just fading out and going into the episode, she says, "It's been a pleasure speaking with you." And then it like, she starts looking and like, she's really
Yeah.
confused about what's happening. And then it like, actually like the camera tilts away, and it's very unsettling, right?
It is.
That it's
I remember
like,
that. It's very weird. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's sort of that thing, like with Cooper, the whole thing that Hawk says is that whoever is not true of heart
Yes.
will fail in the lodge. The lodge will basically destroy them. And as we've learned throughout the season, Cooper is not the perfect, Boy Scout that we've always thought. And I think you really nailed something there. The fact that he has never tried to address that side of himself. And we will get to, in the return, the idea of the bridging of Cooper's. We'll get there. We will get there. We're not going to get there here.
Right.
But I thoroughly believe you're right in that the things that he's not willing to confront about himself are the things that end up really being his downfall within.
Right.
In a lot of ways, I think he looks at saving Annie as sort of trying to save Wyndham Earle's wife that he couldn't do before.
And Laura.
And Laura,
like,
exactly.
Yeah,
and Laura.
All the people he couldn't save.
I couldn't save them, but God damn it, I can save her. And it's sort of, if you think about it in the modern lens, it's kind of a chauvinistic thought that I, the man, have to rescue the girl. Like I'm the only one.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, that's sort of his downfall.
And I do think that's a lot of what season 3 or The Return is about. But again, we'll get there. But I think there's something to, and I think there's something in Fire Walk with Me about Laura being the one who was able to embrace all of her aspects of her darkness.
Yes.
And that's what makes maybe her more successful in saving herself. Because again, we'll get there, but I think that's what I think Fire Walk with Me is about.
Yes, I would agree with that completely.
And that she's able to do that in a way that Cooper is not. Right. And maybe it's his hero complex that is contributing.
It's definitely
to that. Yeah.
I think his hero complex, while it is his moral compass and guiding him to do the best he can and be the best in any situation, which is what we love about him.
Yeah.
It is a flaw. Because when you can't confront your demons, they will eventually catch up to you. And in a lot of ways, the doppelganger, as we will find out in The Return, is kind of like, again, what does Albert say? That maybe Bob is just the evil that men do.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what his doppelganger really is. It's the evil that Cooper has done finally coming back, and he has to address it. Yeah. And the thing is, we do know that he's going to spend the next 25 years in the lodge basically having to come to terms with that. So for me, like I always looked at it as the shadow self and the failure of facing his shadow self.
He doesn't save Annie. Annie gets out somehow, but it's not him saving her.
No,
like maybe she saves herself. Maybe she gets herself out. Maybe because Wyndham Earle was the one who brought her in there, and the entities that were in there and dealt with Wyndham Earle didn't care about her, so she just got ejected. Maybe she got herself out. But it's not Cooper who saves her, which is something I hadn't really noticed before either.
No, it's true, because she doesn't
save the girl.
No, she's already out, and she's already like in the hospital and shit. Like, no,
and we find out, yes, she is okay. Again, if you trust the final dossier, we find out that she is okay. Again, this is I think this is a failure for sure.
It is. No, it very much is.
Of our hero.
And that's what really makes it so shocking that your series finale at this point is your main hero failing.
Yeah.
And again, talk about Lynch always trying to like take the concept of the norm of television and putting it on its ear.
Yeah.
Boy, that's this ending in a nutshell.
Yeah.
But getting to that point, we see Wyndham Earle, go for the gut shot there,
and Cooper's bleeding before and after he's not, which is really interesting.
Right. So we have that moment, and that's what brings Bob out. That was enough of a move for Bob to be like, no, baby, this is not how we do this. And it's interesting that it's like Bob who kind of saves Cooper at that point by being like, he's trying to take your soul, but he can't do that. Right. He's not allowed. He doesn't have that power. Right. And then you get that awesome shot of like basically his soul getting sucked out of him by Bob.
Yeah.
It's such a cool moment because Bob just lets Cooper go. He doesn't do anything else. He gets rid of Wyndham Earle, and then Cooper's like, I'm getting the shit out of here, right? Like he's suddenly not there, but then here comes the doppelganger.
Yeah.
And I just remember
Mhm.
seeing the moment that the doppelganger ran in. I just remember like just watching and just being like, oh no. Oh no.
That is a scary moment. Like
It
I
is.
always feel like that because he's catching up. It's flashing lights
Mhm.
again. We have that same strobe effect that we were having before. That's so disconcerting.
The
We
shot
see
that
him getting
always,
there. We see him reach him.
the
And-
one that always gets me is when Dale is at one end of the hallway and the
Mhm.
doppelganger is at the other, and they're
Yeah.
just looking at each other.
Mhm.
It's so chilling because I'm like, what would you fucking do
Yeah.
if you look down a hall and there's fucking you?
Yeah.
Like you are looking.
Well, he's confronting his shadow self.
He
Right
is, but I mean, like in
Literally.
as it
like
gets.
if you just walked into an alley and suddenly there's another Colin at the end of that
Yeah.
alley, like, dude, that would kind of break your brain.
But it's asking us, I think, it's asking us to look at the darkest parts of ourselves. It's asking us to
absolutely.
wrestle with who we are. Right? Like,
Mhm.
I don't know if I see, like, I mean, I don't know if I think of the doppelgangers literally as these other entities. To me, I think it's the part of Cooper that Bob is with, right? Like
Mhm.
and that's who Mr. C is, again,
Absolutely.
jumping ahead. But I mean, Mr. C is the part of Cooper that Bob is with, because we all have, again, if you look at the evil that men do aspect of this sort of thing, then that's who, that's
We've
where
all got a Bob basically.
That's
in
right.
us,
Yeah.
in some way. Yeah.
That's
That's
right.
a valid point.
Well, I mean,
And we've talked about numerous
Reg-
times. Do you look at what happened with Leland? And
Right.
again, you can play it either way.
Yep,
Either
yep.
he's inhabited by Bob and Bob does all those horrible things, or Bob just kind of lets Leland be what he wants to be and just kind of leaves him kind of with his morality unchecked.
Mhm.
It can go
Mhm.
either way. You can take it either way, and no interpretation is wrong.
No, exactly. That's right. I agree.
Yeah, I always thought it was just the idea of this entity area of the Black Lodge just pumping out basically like the evil versions of people.
Right.
It's
right.
such an unsettling concept because it really does mean that every one of us has that waiting for us if we would ever get in there.
Well, for me, it's again, it's not necessarily different. It is us. It is part of who we are, and it is about wrestling with those parts, and it is about making decisions about those parts, and about Cooper not, as Hawk describes it, so beautifully, is not confronting himself with
Basically, you have to be like, with courage in your heart. You've got.
That's right. Yeah, because it is really terrifying to think about the darkest parts of you, or to think about the bad things, like either that you've done or that you've thought or whatever, right? Like the darkness within us is a terrifying thing to confront. And for me, that's what so much of this moment is about, right?
Sure.
And it's about choosing who we're going to be. And in that moment, Cooper chooses the darkness in a way, and it's a wrestling within him. It's almost like the angel and demon on his shoulders,
right,
wrestling in a way. And I think, but you're right, I don't think there's a wrong way to interpret.
I've always loved, and again, I think it's taking it to that cosmic level, the idea of the doppelgangers being like real entities, like that they could inhabit our world and we would not know it.
Right.
And there's just like basically this sinister agent just walking about that we don't even realize it in broad daylight. And again, I've always loved that level of that sort of cosmic horror of that being an actual entity.
Yeah, and I think that's another really interesting way to think about all of this too.
For me, it just ratchets up the terror for me. Like,
right.
You can definitely play the whole thing from the psychological game, and it absolutely works. And there's plenty of evidence that makes that theory, like that your idea is completely right. And absolutely. I think it's a little bit of both. I think Cooper fails in the fight, but I just kind of feel like it's almost like he fails, but he did try. Like he didn't just give in. He really does try to escape it. He really does try to escape that fate, but there's no way to escape that fate. It catches up to you. Again, the idea that if you keep pushing your demons down and keep pushing them away and never confronting them, they will catch up to you. They will catch up to you, and it will be bad when they do. And that is exactly what happens here, because as we see in the most fucking heartbreaking, frustrating ending of a show ever, that when Cooper got out, he's not alone.
And who doesn't have who has perfect courage, I guess is what I'm asking for, right? Like that test is too high a bar.
It's
especially if you're not ready.
It really is. Yeah.
And I mean, who ultimately is ready? And maybe it does take 25 years to.
Right.
I think if there's anyone who could, I think possibly Margaret.
Yeah.
Possibly Hawk.
Major Briggs.
Well, that's just because they are so in tune with what's going on.
Exactly. And Hawk would know that if I'm going to go in there, I have to make peace with who I really am.
Right.
Hawk would know that.
Yeah.
Cooper, again, his hero complex is there. Yeah. He's not really willing to accept that. Right. And there's something kind of beautiful about that. That Cooper will not accept defeat. He will not accept that darkness. There has to be an answer, and I have to be able to save her. I've got to be able to do this.
Oh, for sure.
That's something so wholly 1950s. Yeah. You know, I'm not going to say machismo, but there's that 1950s, like that bravura, I guess, that men were to have, you know, like FBI agents, and I'm a good guy, and I'm going to save the day. Cooper believes in everything he does.
Not quite machismo, but definitely feeding into the patriarchal society of what his position is, not only as a law enforcement officer, but as a man.
Yeah, you can look at Twin Peaks as a real deconstruction of that, of the patriarchy in a lot of ways. It really is. Like the patriarchy sucks. Like it really does. Like it just sucks. And here's why: because it makes people think that they have to be this way, they have to do this. You have a role, and that's what you're supposed to do because of what's between your legs or what's not between your legs.
Well,
and that's
because we find out that the person who ends up saving Laura is Laura herself, right? Like that.
In the long grand scheme of things, baby, that's how it goes.
Exactly,
that's how it goes.
Right. That she has to be.
Well, and harks back to her funeral, and Bobby's like, "None of you did anything. None of us did anything."
You want to know who killed her? We all did.
We did, yeah.
And I think that's what's, again, when Cooper does finally get out, you know, of course, thank God, of course, Harry's there. You know, Harry's waiting on him. And I love that the final two people with him are Doc Hayward and Harry.
Again, Doc Hayward is having a busy night. Let me.
Well, he sure is.
Yeah, that guy's been all over town dealing with everything.
Ben Horn, like
he beat the hell out of Ben Horn. he goes and patches up Nadine.
You know what's
and
great?
now he's dealing with Coop.
You can't arrest me for what I did to Ben Horn because I got to help Cooper.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right. You know, you're right. We can't do it. You got to come with me, Doc. We got to.
He's never had this much action in any episode
ever. Probably
series finale.
To be honest, shit. There's a lot going on here. It is a big finale for Doc Hayward.
Yeah.
But we get to the end, and I mean, honest to God, this is one of those like rage quit moments of television where Cooper goes into the bathroom because he has to brush his teeth, which is it's so oddly delivered, but it's also so perfectly Cooper. And so you're not.
Yeah.
Well, are you gone through a lot of shit, you know? So he's tired.
The original script had some of the scenes in the
missing pieces.
Garage. Yeah. If you look at, like, there was a dentist scene in there that Lynch totally threw out and replaced. So the teeth brushing, I wonder if it was like a bit of a callback reference.
That probably was. No, that probably was. And again, it's almost still, in its own way, it's still a callback to the quirkiness of Agent Cooper. Like he's gone through all this stuff, and wakes up, and the first thing he needs to do is brush his teeth. That's such a holy Twin Peaks line that it's almost innocuous at the time. But
it works even without. But I do wonder if it was going to be like intended as a reference to something that ended up not happening.
There is something about the way he delivers the line. It's not. It doesn't sound like
there's something unsettling about it.
Yes, something's very unsettling about it. And so we cut to the bathroom, and there's Cooper, and he's making this odd spiral shape with the toothpaste. And then he looks in the mirror, and by Christ, like rams his head into it. And suddenly when he pulls back, there's fucking Bob. And I remember, like, when that happened, like, I was just like, oh my God. And then the fucking, written by written by David Lynch, produced by Twin Peaks, David Lynch and Mark Frost, and I'm just like, oh my Christ, you cannot end like this. It was like, I don't know that I've ever been so mad at the end of something in my life as I was at the end of that episode.
See, I loved it. I'm the kind of person who loves an ending that leaves you with all kinds of questions. Like
I
even back then, I was like a big fan of the
and
fact
see,
that,
like,
like,
that's
even
at
if
that
we never
time,
got another piece of Twin Peaks, I would have been like,
right?
that is a excellent,
15,
like,
I mean,
I'm
15-year-old
out of here.
it's a hell of an
15-year-old me is
ending.
not willing to accept that yet, because 15-year-old me still believes there has to be some sort of resolution. And 15-year-old me, god damn, if he could have punched a hole through a screen, he would have. Let me tell you, he was fit to be tied when that ended.
Well, I mean,
Now, as we know now, like, obviously the way that I interpret television and film and pop culture and stuff now, yeah, I'm with you. I like the idea of there's no clear-cut ending.
yeah,
You can kind of speculate where it goes. You can do whatever you want. And then, of course, 25 years later, we actually did get to see what would happen. But as it stands, if you were to tell me that Beyond Life and Death is your favorite episode of Twin Peaks, I totally get it. Like, it is a completely valid choice because, man, it's chock full of everything. And honest to God, I will say, I think the last 15 minutes of this episode, I sit there in awe that actually was on network television, that actually
In 1991.
on broadcast television. It's so fucking weird, but B, it's so fucking terrifying. And it's so otherworldly. And what on earth could you have compared that to in 1991? There's nothing. There's nothing.
No.
Because even Lynch hadn't gotten to that level.
No, I was going to say maybe Blue Velvet, but
even that wasn't quite there yet.
No, it doesn't.
This whole discussion of what's in the lodge, or the waiting room to the lodge, or the multiple neutral grounds of the lodges, and you're talking about all these doppelgangers. I'm like, is Jordan Peele a fan of Twin Peaks? Because you're just describing us.
I know. I was going to say us has definitely. When you were saying about the doppelgangers, I was thinking, well, that's basically us.
It is. Honestly, you can't tell me that Jordan Peele, again, Twin Peaks is an influential piece of pop culture, and Jordan Peele, with his reboot of The Twilight Zone and with his own films, there is so much Twin Peaks love, especially in Us. Jesus Christ, especially in Us. It's even there in Get Out. There's a quirkiness to Get Out that definitely.
Nope. I mean, definitely Nope has a
lot of
Twin Peaks lynchiness.
That is, for me, that's Peele's masterpiece. I think Nope. It's amazing. I'm going off topic for just a second. I think that film is brilliant. I really do.
And just thinking of all the iconic TV shows that came after this, because we've talked about how big the X-Files obviously was an influence on this, but
a show called
talking about Twin Peaks,
Picket
Fences, very much inspired by this.
Like,
even Northern Exposure,
just talking about the town itself, I feel like Buffy is obviously influenced by Twin Peaks.
Sure. Well, if you've not played the video game series of Alan Wake, that's straight up. If Twin Peaks was a video game, it's Alan Wake. It's very well done, and you could definitely tell Silent Hill. Like Hideo Kojima,
for sure,
said that Twin Peaks is a massive influence on Silent
Hill. I don't know if you guys remember, there was a short-lived TV series on Fox about a decade ago now, as part of the whole Shyamalan renaissance that he executive produced, called Wayward Pines.
Wayward Pines, yeah. That definitely
very much,
Yeah, no, it definitely did. You can't tell me differently. It's again, you can't put too fine a point on how influential Twin Peaks has been for pop culture in every way, shape, and form. Like, it is such a God. It's one of those like lightning in a bottle kind of things. When it happened in 90 and 91, like there was really, it almost like it couldn't have happened at any other time before or after. Like, it had to be right there in that.
It's very much of it. It's very much timeless, and it's very much of that specific moment.
Sure.
And both of those things are true at the same time, I think.
Yeah.
Like, it's really spoiled me for network television. Like, it was hard for me to get into any show after that in the way that I had enjoyed Twin Peaks.
I would say
because it came at this formative time in my own development that like, if I had been an adult when I watched it, I think that, or a young child, I think it wouldn't have had the same effect. But because I was right at this sort of cusp of coming of age when I saw it.
I was right
really,
there. I was at
Yeah.
the cutting my teeth on David Lynch as a
Right.
filmmaker point, right?
Right.
So as a kid, I had seen The Elephant Man, and it terrified me, and it also is one of the most beautiful films I'd ever seen. Like even as a kid, I could process that this is powerful stuff. I was and still am obsessed with 1984's Dune, and that was truly my first real exposure to Lynch being Lynch. It's a weird ass film, man. It's really weird with a fuck ton of world building. Like Lynch is really good at both of those things. Even with the removal of his being able to have the final edit, he's all over that film. Like it's absolutely a David Lynch film. You cannot tell me otherwise. So it wasn't until after Twin Peaks that I finally got to watch Eraserhead and Blue Velvet and Wild at Heart. And then that's what really started my obsession with all things Lynch. And that's where, like, you know, Kevin, who watched, you know, the Star Wars trilogy and all the Spielberg and Lucas films and all those wonderful films of the 80s and stuff, like that's where he realized there are other movies than what's at the Cineplex all the time. Like there's a whole wealth of films I've never had the chance to watch because they've never played here. And so that's where I became very, very, I mean, hell, I'll just say I became obsessed with David Lynch. I really did. In high school, he was like, I mean, just my jam, dude. Like I found him at just that right point. Like you said, very formative years, your high school years. That's where I discovered him. And I carried him with me everywhere I could. I would preach the gospel of Lynch to anybody who would listen, which was very few in St. Albans, West Virginia. It was very few. But I'm like, guys, if you were to watch Twin Peaks, you'd be like, this looks like St. Albans. Like our hometown could totally be like Twin Peaks. Like it would, we have churches on every corner. We've got, you know, the little Shoney's and all that stuff. Like we could totally be Twin Peaks.
And I think that's the point of the show, right? And of course that was themes he's playing with in Blue Velvet, but even more so with this show is like Twin Peaks is like any small town in America, and you peel back the layers, there's more to it than what you think. It's not this picturesque small town America.
It works because everybody who's, again, if you're willing to face your shadow self, if you're willing to face shadow history, the 50s were not perfect. The 60s were sure as shit not perfect. And nothing really is. And even the most beautiful, idyllic town, there's problems there. There are things that you don't talk about. The lady who's getting abused by her husband down the street, the kid who's been, you know, attacked by someone at the church. Like there are things like that happening everywhere that nobody wants to talk about. And that's what makes it's really interesting. As fantastical and as soap opera-y and stuff as Twin Peaks is, it's really amazing how real that shit feels. Like, and that is no easy feat, but it's also like you just you're kind of holding a mirror up, right? Like you're kind of like, look, guys, this could be your town. And you know what? The sad thing is it probably is. You just don't know it. Unless you scratch below the surface and really read into what's going on, this shit probably is your town. And that's something we can all unite on, no matter where we live. The three of us live in, you know, different time zones, different states, different countries, right? But we all can identify with it. That is so wholly universal. And I think that's really what's been sort of the long lasting impact of Twin Peaks, is that even if people discover it today, as you know, my partner just discovered it last year, it still feels timeless. As you said, it still feels real in its own weird way. It does. And anybody can identify with it. But the key thing when you get to the end of it all, and holy shit, guys, here we are. The long, strange trip it's been. What it ultimately came down to, though, is we were invested in these characters. We were invested in their lives. And Twin Peaks was more than who killed Laura Palmer. And it's really amazing how much we get after that whole thing is wrapped up. No pun intended. Well, pun intended. But there's still so much more that we have to learn and explore, and so much more lore that's built, so much more about the lodges and everything. It's amazing. And again, it's amazing that Nadine is now, like, you know, she thinks she's in high school, and Ed and Norma are finally getting together, and Dr. Jacoby is still terrible. Why is he still in practice? He's helping for the Civil War. Like, it's like there's all this stuff still going on, and it's all still interesting, and we all keep coming back to it. Even though we've watched this series numerous times, we'll still go back and watch it again from beginning to end, because we love the world, we love the characters, we love the writing, we love what it is. It is Twin Peaks, it is David Lynch, it is Mark Frost, it's so many things. And I think that's, again, it was such a formative time for me to find it in my life. And I think that's why it's always stuck with me, and why when anybody asks that question, what's your favorite TV show? Dude, without a blink of an eye, I'll tell you, Twin Peaks. Like, just straight up Twin Peaks. Like, what's your favorite movie? Jaws. Favorite TV show? Twin Peaks. Like, it's just that, man. It's like that instant. I can tell you that. Now, ask me to make a top 10 list, I can't do it. No. Ask me number one, I can sure as shit tell you. Absolutely.
I can't tell you my favorite movie because I've got a bunch of favorites, but I can tell you my favorite TV series without a question.
Exactly.
It is Twin Peaks.
And that's the thing that Twin Peaks kind of does, man. Like, when you get into it, if you are one of those people that really gets into it, you just absorb it, man. Like, it's there. And it's interesting how seasons 1 and 2, as you said, they feel very timeless, but at the same time, they feel of the time they were made.
Yeah.
Now, The Return feels very modern to me, and we're going to get there. It doesn't have the timelessness, but I think that's sort of the point. I've always felt, and we'll talk more in depth, obviously, because we got 18 hours of that to talk. But I've always felt like the overall theme of that show was basically you can't go home again.
Right.
That's really it in a nutshell. You can't go home again. What you expect Twin Peaks to be 25 years later
is not. Yeah.
But that's the beauty of it. Is your hometown the same now as it was 25 years ago?
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Everything evolves. Everything grows. Right. And Twin Peaks had to do that as well.
Yeah.
It evolves into an 18-hour, fully R-rated, fully David Lynch unleashed series.
Yep.
But before we get to that, of course, we have Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. And
you know, I was going to say, so I was noticing, because I remembered this, but I had to clarify in my head, but Wild at Heart actually came out in the summer of 1990 between seasons 1.
Oh, that's right. It was between the seasons. That's right. That's right.
And it was, debuted at Cannes right after sort of season 1 wrapped up. And then it had its theatrical release wide in and it won the Palme d'Or, and then it got released in the summer in August before the season 2 began again. So we have this little Lynch bit in the middle, and if I'm remembering correctly, that's where we're going next. Is that right? Is that the?
I think we talked about Wild at Heart and Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive.
Yes.
Before we go back to Twin Peaks, if I remember, because we kind of. One of the things that we really wanted to talk about before we get into to Fire Walk with Me and The Return is sort of like where Lynch goes as a filmmaker, because those things are so wholly influenced by what David Lynch will become. Because that's one of the things when Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me came out in 92, hot after the right there at after the end of the series. Boy, it wasn't even a mixed bag. Like, it was just hated. It was absolutely hated.
Booed at Cannes after 2 years ago winning the Palme d'Or with Wild at Heart. He was booed at.
Well, that was also booed at Cannes, though, even though it won.
That's the great thing about Cannes. It can be like,
but I mean, like, how funny to go from winning the Palme d'Or to 2 years later being just like booed and everybody hates your film. Yeah. And then it's hilarious how now, much like films like Blade Runner and Carpenter's The Thing, people have gone back and they're like, "Fuck, this might be the best movie."
We were wrong, right?
Yeah, this might be the best. Some people will say it's their favorite Lynch film. And for a time, I probably would say it was mine until Lost Highway. And Lost Highway for me is just like, well, that I can't wait to talk about that with you guys. Because, man, that movie is just,
I know, I'm looking forward to
there's so many layers to that film. And it again, you have to really have Wild at Heart, Lost Highway, and Mulholland Drive under your belt before you go into The Return. Because I know so many people who didn't watch anything Lynch did outside of Twin Peaks. They had no idea of anything else he ever did. And then
then of course they were going to be disappointed.
So they go into The Return and they're like, what the shit is this? Like, where's Agent Cooper? Where's the Double R Diner? Where's all the stuff I love about Twin Peaks? It's not there. It is, but it's evolved. And Lynch has evolved as a storyteller. And you have to kind of have these films under your belt before you can attack The Return, because Lynch became really big into transcendental meditation. He became really big into dream logic, and those things are on full display in The Return. But if you watch if you watch Wild at Heart, Lost Highway, and Mulholland Drive, you see where those things
Give
are
us some
starting
clues.
to.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
where it's starting to really. That's where Lynch is really coming into what we now know as David Lynch.
Yeah.
The non-studio friendly, like independent, like
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have it my way or the highway. No pun intended. Maybe fully intended. I don't know. But he's very much a different director than he was in the 70s and 80s than he was even during the time of Twin Peaks. And I think if you can get those films under your belt, you can go into The Return in a much richer place.
Right.
My partner had seen Lost Highway with me, so she at least knew going into The Return kind of an idea of where that was going to go. So I'd watched that with her, and then we watched Fire Walk with Me and The Missing Pieces, and she was pretty prepped and ready. Now I will say this: if The Missing Pieces were spliced into Fire Walk with Me and it was released as is in 1992, people would have liked that film more, because The Missing Pieces is all the shit people wanted from a Twin Peaks movie, but it was all taken out. It's got lots of stuff with Harry and, like, the guys at the police station. You've got stuff, with Ed and Norma. You've got Pete. You've got Josie. There's all kinds of stuff that you wanted that's not there. And so you kind of get that with The Missing Pieces. And I do wonder, yes, that film would have been like 3 hours long, but I feel like people would have been more like embracing of it if it had those more what you think of when you think of Twin Peaks moments in it. As it stands, Fire Walk with Me is very much Lynch getting into his dream logic and getting into his meditation in developing, writing, directing, and creating this film. I loved it in 92, even though it wasn't the sequel that I wanted. I loved the film. I had a local theater that ran it for a week. I saw it, I think, 4 out of the 7 days it ran, because I knew it would never run again. Like, I knew I'd never see it on the big screen. My local video store had a pre-used copy of it for sale for like $15. I went and bought that the minute I could. So I had my own copy of it. Of course, it was pan and scan, but by God, I had a copy of it. I had the soundtrack. I obsessed over that soundtrack. It's amazing what Twin Peaks did to me in my high school years. And I dragged different people to go see Fire Walk with Me, and some people were cool with it, and some people looked at me like, you don't get to pick movies ever again. Pick movies again. Like, you have lost that privilege, sir. It's been revoked. So it's funny, like the different reactions I got from it. But I'm really excited to talk about Wild at Heart. I think Wild at Heart is just a crazy, wonderful film.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch it again too. It's probably of the three we're talking about, I've watched it the least. Like, I've watched Lost Highway and
I would say the same thing,
more times.
Well,
so I feel like I don't know them
Wild
as well.
at Heart is oddly hard to, like, I don't think there's a digital copy of it. I think there's a Shout Factory Blu-ray disc.
Yeah.
And I think that's it.
I have a physical media copy of it.
I bought the Shout disc because, like, I don't think.
So it's not available on iTunes, you're saying?
Yeah, it's not. There's no. Yeah, there's no digital copy.
No streaming service at all.
You can't even buy like a digital copy.
Wild.
Like you said, that Shout Factory version is the only one that's out there, I think.
I bet it's on YouTube.
I mean,
it very well might be.
Yeah, if it's somewhere on the internet, that's where it would be.
I mean, like I said, this is why I still buy physical media. So
yes, I agree.
I get very frustrated by the limited selection of a lot of films and the limited availability of a lot of films out there. It's surprising to me how many are not available anywhere.
Especially as many platforms as there is now.
Yeah. How is it not?
You would think everything should be at anyone's fingertips.
For what it's worth, you can buy it on Target's website, the Shout Factory version, for $15.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's not a bad buy.
How has Criterion not done that yet, though? Like, of all the Lynch films that Criterion has done, how is Wild at
It's the
Heart
Palme d'Or winner. Like, how is this
That would have been like the first
not a
one
thing? I know.
Yeah. Like, outside of Eraserhead, I figured that's the first one you picked.
I mean,
right?
it's not my favorite Lynch film for sure. Like, I might, but
I still find it
I
highly
still-
entertaining, though.
I
Like,
still love it. Yeah,
It's
I know.
very
Yeah.
entertaining. Like,
Well, I'm
it
looking
is-
forward to rewatching it, and we all have a way to watch it. Like, I've got a copy.
Yes.
You guys have copies. Okay, so
I'm going to have
all
to
be
get
able
this
watch it.
copy of it because I don't have a copy of Wild at Heart. I
Oh,
just
no.
realized I don't because I kept thinking that Criterion was going to put one out. Like,
Sure,
I thought I'd read somewhere that they were doing that, and then they pumped out Blue Velvet. They pumped out Eraserhead. Fire Walk with Me got one.
Yeah.
Like,
Lost Highway, Mulholland Drive,
Yeah, Lost
and
Highway, I've got
Inland
Lost Highway.
Empire.
So
Maybe
I've got
it's still
the
on
other
the
ones.
list.
It
Maybe
should,
it's still on the
again,
list.
the one that got booed at Palme d'Or, like, and didn't win anything, is on
Yeah.
Criterion,
Yeah.
but the one that won isn't. Like, how does that
Yeah.
work?
Yeah. Well, let's pick a date because I want to watch it. So I'm excited to rewatch
Well,
it. It's been a few
Did
years.
you guys want to jump into Wild at Heart first, or did you want me to try to coordinate and see if we could do the Dune discussion first?
I'd be
No, I
up
forgot
for
we were going to do the Dune
either.
discussion.
I mean, I think that's going to be a really fun discussion. So I'd be up for either.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, it might take a little while to coordinate that. Do you want to like set the?
Let me. Let's not. So, what was that, Colin? Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, maybe why don't we like set the Wild at Heart one because it might take a little bit of coordinating with more people to get the Dune one happening, and then we could, at least set the Wild at Heart one, and we can always bump it if we, but we might be able to squeeze it in before we get to the Dune one.
Okay, let's go ahead and then mark it, and then if I can get Lisa to coordinate with the date, we can just push the Wild at Heart one
Sure.
back.
So 2 weeks from tonight isn't going to work for me. I'm traveling again.
That's fine because I'm doing a different recording for a different show. So how does the 30th look for everyone?
30th should be good. And we can always move it if we need to. But
I was going to say I might need to move. I might need to move that one. I might not. Let's say for now we'll go for the 30th. But if I need to move it, I'll let you know. ASAP.
Okay.
I would just need to push it back to like the 7th of July. Like that would be like all I'd need, or even possibly Monday, the 1st of July.
Okay.
Yeah, it won't be a massive issue. We'll get it figured out. But I'm going literally right now. I'm checking out with Wild at Heart in my checkout.
The first could possibly work for me too because it's a holiday here, so I should be.
Oh,
I'm going to see fireworks. I should be good that night too.
cool.
Okay. I'm excited to revisit Wild at Heart. Like I said, I revisit the other ones more frequently, so it's been that much longer since.
Right,
since Wild
it's
at
been a
Heart.
tick for me. It really has.
And I'm really in more of a Laura Dern renaissance now than I've been for a while. So I'm always up for more Laura Dern. So that'll be great.
Yeah, and boy, Nicolas Cage is just amazing in this film. Like truly, like his Elvis is very impressive. I'll just say that it's definitely something. And the great Willem Dafoe, Bobby Peru, man, those teeth.
Yeah.
Diane Ladd, it's such a great
oh man,
that's an amazing cast.
You get Grace Zabriskie, you get Cheryl Lee, and you get Sherilyn Fenn all in it too. So he was able to tap into his Twin Peaks group and bring them over, which is cool. And you get Laura Palmer as Glenda the Good Witch. Like it doesn't get much better than that. It's pretty spectacular. Just a crazy film. Like for me, like there were two films of the 90s I always kind of think would be a great double feature, and that's Wild at Heart and True Romance. Both of them
they do have a lot
of similarities there.
There's a lot of similarities.
Those would be a fun double feature. And I have that beautiful Shout Factory big ass collector's edition of True Romance. So I might pull that double feature off and just see what it's like, because I love True Romance. Could talk about that film all night long. And Wild at Heart and that are so similar.
All right, guys. Well, thanks so much. This has been,
what a journey. Like,
amazing. Yeah. Great. And I've enjoyed revisiting it and having, that being able to have the discussion with you guys about it, that's
it's
a real joy.
It's just been a real pleasure on my end, because again, like finding people who love that thing you love like you do is always a special thing.
When did we start? I don't remember
It's
when we
been
started.
almost a year. It's
Yeah.
been almost a year because
Yeah.
we started in July.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
that tracks. That does. But for what it's been worth,
But
first
I
of all,
mean,
Cody, thank you for putting this together,
Yeah.
and thank you for inviting us to be a part of this journey with you. Colin, I'd never met you until we did this, and I'm so thrilled that I know you.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we're not at the end of this road. We're not
at the end
ahead
either,
of
but
us.
like, goodness gracious, it's the friendships that you form over, the crazy things you love, and this is definitely one of those. So I'm grateful for the two of you for allowing me to be a part of this, and always just up for a good, lively discussion about a show that definitely has earned that. So bless you both. Thank you both for allowing me to be a part of this crazy trip. It's been an absolute blast, and cannot say thanks enough for letting me just tag along.
Yeah.
oh, it's a pleasure for both of you, especially because your guys' knowledge and enthusiasm for the show. And like I said, to discuss, normally when you discuss a director's work, you wouldn't spend nearly a year talking about a TV show they worked on. But I feel like Twin Peaks is essential for David Lynch.
It's
It
his
might
magnum
be his
opus.
magnum
Like,
opus. Yeah.
it is. There's no other way to put it. It is his magnum opus. When you put all 3 seasons together,
and the movie,
and the movie, it's consumed his life more than anything, man. Like it's definitely been that linking factor through all of his phases as a director. Like it's always been a part of what he's doing, and that's awesome, man.
All right, guys.
And yeah.
We're looking forward to the
see
next,
you both at the Wild at Heart discussion.
chapter.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right. Keep us
As
posted
we
on soon.
yeah, if you're watching along, we are going to sidetrack for a little bit because we're going to do some what we feel is essential work to prepare for Twin Peaks: The Return.
Yes, it's a little bit of homework.
Not only for
worth your time.
Not only for the show, but just because of where David Lynch goes as a director, it just will make thematic sense.
Yes, it really will. And also too, it's nice to kind of take a little bit of a break from Twin Peaks and talk about the other films that he's done, because he's such an eclectic director. And he's done a little bit of everything, which is pretty amazing. And these films that we're going to talk about really show that. You get very dark humor, you get horror, you get drama, some very powerful drama. And you just get that the stuff that you expect from David Lynch, it's all there, but boy, does it get magnified in a great way. And this is, I mean, some of this like is really Lynch unleashed. And I think a director like him, when he gets to be taken off, it's like him and like minds like his and like Terry Gilliam's, man, when you just unleash him and give him a budget, just stand back and see what happens. If you're lucky, you get something like Brazil, or you get, Lost Highway or Mulholland Drive. And that's the beauty of directors like those visionary directors like them. And they're worthy of that title. Lynch is definitely a visionary director. There's really no one that has an eye quite like him. Nor is there anybody who tells a story quite like that man does. And these films are a bit of a departure from Twin Peaks, but at the same time, you're definitely going to see that influence of Twin Peaks, that what it has as an influence on David Lynch, you're going to see that carry over. And I think if you've never watched a lot of Lynch films, and you're watching this with us and going along with us, these will be some really interesting films for you to have under your belt. I definitely look forward to, we will have very lively discussions about these films. There's really no other way to put it.
And I want to throw out a quick recommendation to anyone watching that is looking for something current that I think is very influenced by David Lynch. I saw a few weeks ago, the TV Glow, one of the most Lynchian current films that I've seen in a really long time. And not in that it's copying anyway. I think it's a wholly original vision from another really fantastic emerging director. But very much in the vein. And so if you're a fan of David Lynch, I think it's the kind of film that you could really enjoy. So I'm just throwing that out there. I want to mention it to people because I think it's a great film for people to see.
And what is it called again?
I saw the TV glow.
Oh, okay. What is that in theaters or is it on streaming?
It's in theaters right now.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Love finding anything Lynchian. It's always good, and I love that we live in a world where Lynchian is a great adjective. You know,
Yeah.
like here we are.
Yeah. And if you know, you're like, oh yeah, I got what you're saying.
I totally get when someone says it's Lynchian, you know you got to feel you got to like Lovecraftian. You got to feel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, he's for someone playing in the Lovecraft world, he's become his own word.
Yeah, it's certain directors can pull that off. He's definitely one that can. Well, guys, we'll talk then and very soon
See
about
you guys soon.
or if you do get the Dune thing moved around, that's fine too. I'm happy to talk about whichever one we get to first. I'm happy.
Yeah, so when we come back to the director's chair, we'll either be discussing Wild at Heart or we'll be having a full-blown Dune discussion.
Excellent. Either way, we win.
Either way,
okay, good night, guys.
And if you've not watched it, guys, watch that Spice Diver edit of Dune. I'm telling you, it's out there on YouTube. Watch it. It's so good.
Good night, guys.
Good night, guys.
Good night.